All right, why don't we get started? We have a pretty full agenda for tonight.
I'll keep an eye on him.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Newburyport School Committee for March 1st, 2021. Mrs. Kennedy, would you please call the roll? And you'll need to unmute yourself. Mrs. Kennedy?
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Here I am. Mr. Hawkeiser? Mr. Hawkeiser? David?
Here.
Mayor Holliday?
Present.
Mr. Menon?
Here.
Mr. Callahan?
Here.
Mr. Reardon?
Here.
Mr. Cole is not there at the moment. Sheila Spalding?
Here.
Okay, Mr. Cole's not there at the present.
Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you, Mrs. Kennedy. I appreciate it. Could we please stand? And Mr. Menon will shift his camera over to his flag. There it is. As we say, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag of the
United States of
America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And I will now turn it over to Mr. Callahan, who will manage public comment.
Yes. All right. We are going to have public comment. We would request that you keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. You say your name and address, and if you could please refrain from mentioning names or identifying information of your children or any others, that would be great. Anybody have public comment? Please raise your hand in the room and I will let you in. I see no hands raised yet. Anybody want to do public comment? We'll do the going once, going twice thing. Going once, going twice. All right, that is it. There is no public comment for tonight, so we can close that and go to the consent agenda with
Just 1 second, Mr. Callahan. Mrs. Kennedy, I didn't know if you noticed, Mr. Cole has arrived.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good evening, Steve. Welcome.
Good evening. Thanks.
All right, Steve, do we have a consent agenda?
Yeah, we have 3 warrants. The first warrant, I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $3,102.64 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, can we get a roll call vote, please, Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes. Ms. Spalding?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Reardon?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Menon?
Yes.
Mayor Holliday?
Yes.
And Mr. Hawkeiser?
Yes. Okay, the second warrant, I move that the following named bills and payrolls of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $14,264.96 be approved for the city auditor to make payment and deduct the funds from the school's account. There are no conflicts.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, can we please get a roll call, Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes. Mr. Hawkeiser?
Yes.
Mayor Holliday?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Menon?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Spalding?
Yes.
Mr. Reardon?
Yes.
Okay.
And the last warrant, I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $315,632.60 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second.
Any discussion? None. Could we please get another roll call vote, Mrs. Kennedy?
Mr. Menon?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Reardon?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkeiser?
Yes.
Mayor Holliday,
Yes.
and let me see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Who am I missing?
Miss
Sheila.
Sheila Spalding.
I'm sorry, Miss Spalding.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We have the NHS student rep report scheduled, but I don't see Ms. Leahy here.
Yeah, Mr. Callahan, I don't think she can attend tonight.
Okay, there we go. Number 5 on the agenda, the girls ice hockey student activity account request from the athletic director. This is pretty simple, right? They asked to start an account to fund their team, and we have a vote. Can I get a motion to approve that account?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion about that?
Nope, they had a great first season. Let's keep it going.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please, Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes, Mr. Reardon,
Yes.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Mr. Menon,
Yes.
Miss Spalding,
Yes.
Mr. Callahan,
Yes.
Mayor Holliday,
Yes.
Mr. Hawkeizer.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okey dokey, got everybody.
Excellent, great. Moving right along. All right, we've got the school improvement plan updates from the building principals. How do you guys want to go about this? Do you want to start at pre-KK or at high school?
I think
Look,
we'll
you go
right. Yeah, I think we could start, if we wanted to start off with pre-KK and go up the chain. I just want to highlight that our principals just giving an update on their school improvement goals. Obviously, the major focus for us has been the pandemic. So some of these goals, they just want to update. We're probably still in progress. And then also how the school improvement plan, working with their school council, also assist them with budget priorities for each building. So for the parents that are out there, just want to thank you for all of your help working with the schools and the school councils, and also some of the students that are part of those teams too. Thank you very, very much. And so with that being said, we can turn it over. And I believe, Mr. Callahan, that each principal can share screen.
Yep, everybody should be able to share their screens. So if you have any problems, let me know, but you should be good to go.
Okay, hi everyone. So it's not just pre-KK. At the Bresnahan level, we have one school council, and it spans pre-K to 3. And Mr. Tim Miller and I are going to share the presentation as soon as I can share my screen. Just one more moment. Okay, and I think Mr. Miller is going to kick us off this evening.
With the introduction page. As Amy said, we have one school council and therefore one school improvement plan for the whole building, pre-K through grade 3. And as our superintendent stated clearly, some of these goals are 2-year goals. And because of the pandemic, we haven't made some of the progress we'd hoped to make, but we're certainly working toward that end. Amy?
Okay, just like to note the beautiful rainbow that brings hope for post-pandemic, as well as little Julia here, who wrote this "Be Happy" sign during recess with a piece of ice last week. But a special thank you to our 2020-2021 Bresnahan School Council. Some of these members are in their 2nd year and helped to bring us through the pandemic. And I would just like to note that we have such an active school council this year. Everyone has been amazing in terms of their involvement and their input and their dedication. So just to recognize each member, we have Samantha McGuire, who is one of our preschool teachers. Madison Stanton, who is a teacher of our therapeutic program and has returned to the Bresnahan this year after previously working as an instructional assistant. We have Holly Curtis, who is our school adjustment counselor. Julie Malkow, who is a special education teacher at the Bresnahan. And then we have Andrea Egmont as our community representative. We feel very fortunate to have her as a part of our school council. Previously, Margot Harrington had started in the shared role, but as you know, she has moved on to another position. And for parent representatives, we had a great interest this year in his first year, Colin Carpenter. We have Shannon Cormier, also in her first year. Heather Eigen, who is completing, or maybe not completing, but in her second year. We have Carrie Hansen in her first year, also as a parent representative. Carrie McDonald, who is in her second year as well. And Kirsten Rowe for parent representatives. And then obviously Mr. Miller and myself.
Okay. And this particular slide just touches quickly on some of our priorities. We'll go a little bit deeper into a number of these as we move through our slides. But these are some of the planned priorities. We are reimagining our tiered literacy program. I know there was some work done on that prior to my year at the Bres. But unfortunately, again, with the hybrid and the remote, we had to put a few things on hold, but they're certainly there waiting and ready to take off next year. Cross your fingers next year as soon as everyone comes back. We've refined some of our RTI procedures and protocols. That's a procedure where teachers can bring students that are struggling forward and discuss them with a group of people and come up with ideas and thoughts on how to more effectively instruct that student. We are working on using data more effectively. Thankfully, Emily Russin, the literacy coordinator for the district, has helped us quite a bit with that. We are going to continue to develop our therapeutic programs, our IDC program, again, the literacy programs, and academic supports and interventions. Throughout this year, because of the hybrid and now there's a possibility of return, we have a strong focus on social emotional learning. I hope that everyone can hear me because my computer's telling me I'm unstable, which may be true. We're trying to develop some professional school community relationships. Andy Egmont, who was mentioned, we're very, very happy to have her on our school council, and she provides so much for the kids in Newburyport. So we're strengthening that relationship as well. And then, of course, provide professional development opportunities to help our staff close what we are pretty certain are going to be some relatively significant learning gaps after a year of this crazy COVID learning environment.
Okay, thanks, Tim. And so the next slides, we're not going to go into all the detail included in here, but these are the goals in our school improvement plan. And we have typically broken them down into the categories aligned from the DESE. So our first goal that we wanted to highlight under the curriculum planning and assessment goal is over the past couple of years and going into next year, we're going to continue to refine and enhance our response to intervention program. So response to intervention, you may or may not know, is the first sign that we see when a student might be struggling, whether it be academically, behaviorally, or socially. We have a process in which teachers can bring them forward to a team of their peers, and we can define interventions and short-term plans for those students to see if we are able to help remediate any of the concerns coming forward. We have been working very hard on our RTI protocols and procedures for several years now. Currently, we have our assistant principal, Ann Doble, and Dr. Michelle Clark, our school psychologist, that are leading that team at the school. And going forward, we are looking to see what kinds of things can we do to both strengthen our Tier 1 program and provide support to the students and the teachers. And so some of the budget connections that you see here are continuing with professional development allocations. You know, we're very lucky to have the Swayze Fund here in Newburyport for any teacher that wants to go and take a course, but sometimes we may want to do something in-house, or we might want to train staff at a staff meeting or one of our professional development days, and at different times that does require some funding. We were very fortunate this year to have Rebecca Stewart join us as a reading coach at the Bresnahan School. Currently, her position is sort of half-time interventionist and half-time reading coach. We have found that she has made really great connections with the staff, and she's been able to build a lot of rapport with the teachers. And going into the remainder of the spring and next year, we see the need to help the teachers strengthen their Tier 1 program as more students might need support. Our literacy program has always been supported by Title I teachers and specialists, but we have had one math interventionist at the Bresnahan for several years now, and he is amazing. His name is Steve Costello. This year, he has been working in the remote academy, but even in a typical year, he was stretched pretty thin. And so adding an additional math interventionist so that we can differentiate for the students has been something that we have put forward for a couple of years now, and we're putting it forward again for FY22. And then going forward, we want to continue to vertically align the curriculum with new curriculum and instruction with support. We have some new district positions coming in as well, and working with our new team members to do that. And then to the right, you'll see that we have what we hope the outcomes to be of each of these things and how we will measure them. Mr. Miller, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, I'm ready for the next screen when you are. Our teaching and learning goal: increase the number of students reading at grade level by 20% through implementation of a new word study program, a WIN block, and tiered literacy supports. As you can see on the left, a systemic research-based word study program. We're excited to implement that. That was going to be something that was brought along this year. But again, with COVID, that has been moved to the 21-22 upcoming season. That is the Foundations Word Study program. I'm excited about bringing that on board. I'm also really excited about some of the tiered supports that we're going to try to put in place, because to me, if you're in a classroom with 20 kids, there's 20 different learning styles. And this tiered approach allows teachers to more effectively differentiate and reach the needs of all of those students. I'm excited about this goal, to be honest with you. I think our literacy program can use a little boost. I can't wait to work with Emily Russin even more closely than we already have to get this into place. Some of the budget implementations are, of course, the new word study programs, which I believe you guys reviewed last year, some professional development costs, and some other costs for interventions and materials there. The WIN block is one thing I want to touch on. That's something that I've done in the past in other buildings. It would allow me to create a block of time, probably around 45 minutes, where grade levels can all come together. The teachers can come together, and then they can split those kids into a number of groups, not just if we have 6 teachers. We also have special educators and Title I teachers and other people, so that we can split that group of kids instead of just into 6 classrooms. We can split them into as many little bit smaller groups that for that 45 minutes, at least twice a week, hopefully daily, students can be grouped and work on places where there are learning gaps, places where there are needs. So if there's a gap that 15 kids have a similar struggle, we could put them into a group, address that struggle, and then a few weeks later or a month later, we the teachers come together and remake the groups. As kids become proficient in one area, they may move to another group. It also allows you to do some enhancing for those kids that are really on the mark and provide them some extra things during that time. Amy, do you have anything you want to add there?
I would just like to note that we're really excited to begin next year the Foundation's Word Study Program for our phonics. And also this year we have started to implement what is known as the Hegarty Phonemic Awareness Program, which is really working on phonemic awareness skills, mainly at the younger levels, having the students hear the letter name, letter sound, and recognition. And the way that that's built is it's very structured from week to week. It runs the span of the school year, and there are usually about 35 lessons for each week. And we've already begun to use that this year. And we did see some pretty good results in the DIBELS tests that we give midwinter for being able to recognize phonemes and being able for students to break apart phoneme segmentation. So that is an additional piece that I think is noteworthy. Going into the next goal, we have a social emotional goal. This usually falls under implementing a safe and supportive school environment. As you know, for the past several years, we have implemented the ALICE program for school safety. And through the superintendent support, we're also going to be using now an app called the Enforce 911 program, which we are just now starting to roll out some training on later this spring. And we think that it will complement our safety procedures very nicely, particularly with the ALICE program, which for those of you who might not be familiar with the acronym, is our intruder and safety and emergency protocols. This year, you know that the district has been working with Michael Eatman on a cultural competency focus. He's done a lot more work, started off at the high school and the middle school, and now we're starting to work a little bit more closely going forward into the spring with Michael. And then it's really to have the awareness of diverse and culturally competent literature, make sure that we're looking at resources through the lens of an equity rubric, and making sure that we're representing all families, all cultures, all nationalities, and how are we intentional about that in the lessons that we choose to do, our activities, and even the language that we use. So that is a big goal district-wide, but also at the Bresnahan. And then going forward, as we continue hopefully to come out of our COVID-19, just all the support that we have been doing and going forward. What does the pandemic support for staff and students transitioning from a remote or hybrid to a more in-person model look like? It's something that I have been really curious about, especially with our youngest students whose frame of reference for school right now is their classroom. They're not really traveling around the building, and there's very, very few students. And so how do we work to expose them to what a typical school year looks like going forward? So just professional development and mental health, continuing our work with trauma-informed school curriculum, social emotional curriculum, working closely with our school adjustment counselors, with Holly Curtis, who's on our school council as our social worker, and also what we're hearing from parents. We talk about this quite a bit at school council, and we have been trying to put different articles out to parents, whether it's through our weekly Wednesday or asking them to reach out and how their students are doing and what we might see as we move back to a more typical routine. So we know that that's a bit fluid as the months go by, and just as we did last year, we'll adjust and make decisions about what will be best going forward. Do you have anything to add to that, Mr. Miller?
Just one quick thing, and you feel free to move the slide, but with regards to social emotional, on the very, very first day that teachers showed up, I talked, Amy talked, we all talked a lot about how much support we felt these kids would need because of their time at home, sitting like we are in front of a screen. And the teachers have just really gone above and beyond. And I just want to give them a little pat on the back. The daily attention to the social emotional well-being of those kids has been outstanding. I just want to compliment them on that. So that's all. The next goal is the family and community engagement goal. And boy, are we lucky to have Andy on our school council, because she is so involved and so creative. She just does an outstanding job with NYS. I've only known her for a short time, but it's my understanding she's worked closely with the Bresnahan for a number of years now. We're hoping to add some more of her programs as we're able to bring kids into the school and keep them for after-school activities. We're hoping to add through NYS, as well as some other community agencies, some more after-school programming to provide some additional supports, not only for our at-risk students, but for all of our students. We're going to partner with the Y and NYS in particular for after-school program. We'd also like to have our teachers develop some in-house after-school programming, which is probably the only one that has much of a budget connection to this, because most of our programs are paid through the PTO and the, oh goodness, help me, Amy, the grant.
For the after-school programs, well, really through either the Y After School program that we have, which runs until 6 o'clock every night, but also the youth service program. They're trying to build more of their programs to happen right at the Bresnahan School, thus taking out that travel component for the young students. So we already had some of that this year with an after-school basketball program.
Yeah, we have a little bit as COVID recedes. Again, cross your fingers that will grow. And then the school and classroom communication system. Right now, if you are a parent at the Bres, of a student at the Bres, you may be hearing getting communication from Dojo or from Blackboard Connect or from the Remind app or from parent newsletters. School dismissal manager, all of the above. There's communication coming from all over the place, your email, your text, your phone, and we would love to streamline that. We've looked into some systems. We need to do a little bit further research and find one, if we can, very streamlined system that'll provide all of that communication in one system. So parents will only need to look in one spot to find all of that communication. It's a little less overwhelming while still being able to deliver all the necessary information. Amy, anything?
The only other thing I would add is, in speaking with Andy Egmont, we learned from her that she is looking also to expand the learning center model that we currently have in one of our neighborhoods here in Newburyport, and bring that to students across the city. So that is a partnership as well, because many of our teachers will go to the learning center to provide support. This year, it's been mostly through youth services and Christopher Kane, but sort of spreading out across all of the different neighborhoods in Newburyport.
And a summary of the budget impacts of these goals that we're trying to reach. The first one is an additional grade 3 teacher. The numbers bear out that we'll need another. And if you just look at the simple fact that there are currently 7 grade 2 teachers, 8 grade 1, 7 grade 2, and only 6 grade 3. So as those students move up, classes get a little bigger by grade 3. Based on our projections, which are a best guess based on kids that are in remote academy, kids we currently have, a typical number of new enrollees during the summer, the range gets just over 23. And certainly to start the year, we would like it to be lower than that. So that's the justification, I suppose, for adding another grade 3 teacher. And then what Amy had spoken about earlier, a math coach. Slash interventionist, I suppose. The way I see the position in my vision is to help build our staff's math skills, and their capacity. And as that capacity builds, spend time working directly with students, doing interventions. So it's kind of a two birds with one position. It's a exciting thing because we've seen what a wonderful job the reading coach interventionist has done this year, and how we can expand that into math, expand that reading position a little bit, and have a math person right next to her would really enhance everything we're doing.
Great. You know what, I also just wanted to mention there, Mr. Miller, this is the first year that we have had to drop to 6 sections of grade 3, both because of a smaller class going into grade 3 and the students that are partaking in remote academy. So really, if we bring that up, it's more getting along the lines of where we were in previous years. The next one is a big piece. And there's some history here, but we would like to restructure. Currently, we have one person at the Bresnahan who is a library media specialist. And that person, Catherine Page, who's amazing, she not only runs a library, which is very much still an introduction to our youngest students in a typical year, coming up to hear a read aloud, do a connected activity, take out books and things like that, but also the hub of sort of research and learning for the grades 1 through 3. When we hired Catherine, we had hired her as a technology integration specialist. And as we were trying to get our STEM program off the ground a few years ago, and we had a retirement of a librarian, we kind of said, well, let's try this out. Let's see how it would be if the librarian now was more the LMS, the library media specialist. And Catherine is super talented, and she does sort of straddle both of those, but particularly with the past year with remote learning and technology integration, we have learned so much. And there's a lot that we would like to keep going to continue to provide strong software programs and supports for the students. And we're finding that this position is just a little too large for one person. Christina Davis and I had also put in the request to separate it last year. And we understand that, you know, every year some things are able to be funded and some things aren't. But this has really sort of risen to a need right now at the Bresnahan. And we don't think that that's a need that's going to get any less in the coming years. So what we would like to do is have Catherine go back and focus mainly on the technology integration that she was originally hired to do before we restructured a few years ago, and focus on hiring a library media specialist to do the literacy supports and all the other components of a library. And some of, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to interrupt about that one before you go to the next one. That library media position, first of all, we have an absolutely spectacular elementary school library that isn't used nearly frequently enough. We need to get kids in there with books in their hands. But it will also allow me to create a schedule that will allow our teachers to collaborate more effectively, more frequently, and that can do nothing but enhance everything we do. People sharing ideas, sharing expertise improves everybody around them, and having that additional spot where kids go for specials allows us to be a little more creative in our scheduling. Sorry, Amy.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I'm sorry I forgot about that component. And the other things that we have already talked about in our presentation thus far, but certainly funding for Tier 2 intervention programs. When we think of tiered learning, we think of Tier 1 as the core learning, the core curriculum in the classroom. Tier 2, those students that might need some interventions, but not specialized instruction. Mainly right now, what we have is Title I support and the one math position, and knowing that we're going to have to make some shifts next year to kind of, you know, respond to the whole class and where students are coming in at. And so looking at different programs and materials and resources as well as personnel. And then also the need for further professional development opportunities if there's something that we would like to focus on as goals for the year and that we might want to bring in to either small groups of teachers or to the whole school that might go above and beyond what is budgeted at a district level. So really looking at that as we start to bring children back into school. And I think that is our presentation. Any questions?
Superintendent, do you want to have them do questions at the end after all the schools have done, or do you want people to ask questions per building?
I would leave it up to the chair and the vice chair. It's however you want to proceed. It might be better to ask questions in between. That way they're fresh right now.
Okay, sure. All right, Don, sorry, Mayor Holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. First of all, I just want to thank Mr. Miller and Ms. Sullivan. It's clear from your presentation that even though you're giving us an overview and a highlight of the work that you've done, that you really have your pulse on what the needs of your school are and what you're anticipating going forward when we finally get all our kids back to school. My question, though, is, if you don't have this data, it's okay. But you talked about in terms of your literacy goal that you hope to increase by 20% all students reading at grade level. Do you have a baseline now about where we are in the school?
I can speak mainly to the kindergarten. We just completed some mid-year assessments, and I was very curious to see those. Just looking to see where children came in at and what they achieved by mid-year and how that compared to last year. And I wasn't sure, Mayor, if it was going to be like just completely like a learning loss. But there have been some benefits to our in-person model at kindergarten because the students are in daily, they're in 4 days a week. And although it's less learning time, it's a half-day model, the class sizes have been very small. So most of our kindergarten classes are 8 to 10 students, which then has allowed for a lot of individual attention and instruction. So I wasn't sure how it was going to go. We're about 10% difference in student achievement towards proficiency, which I thought really wasn't too bad. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was a 50% difference. What that tells me is that the teachers have really adjusted to their model and they're really working hard. But, obviously getting the kids back for longer time on learning would certainly be helpful for that exposure. But we are doing I think the teachers are doing a really great job. And at this midpoint of the year, we also develop instructional focus plans based upon where the kids are at. And then we support that through progress monitoring every few weeks. So I can say we're on it. I hope it continues in that trajectory between now and the end of the year. But there has been a slight dip, but not as much as I may.
Thanks, Amy. And it's awfully familiar because it's essentially the same thing we're doing. Our teachers are meeting in grade level groups with myself, with the assistant principal, Ms. Doble, and with Emily, the literacy specialist, to go through the literacy data. They took dibbles at the very beginning of the year. They've taken it just, about a month ago, and they'll do it again toward the end of the year. And like Amy said, I was expecting just disastrous results, and we haven't seen that. Certainly we see some gaps, but not nearly as bad as we thought it would be, which is, in my opinion, a testament to the hard work that our teachers have done. And now that we've done it a second time, the teachers have gone through the data. Again, they're developing individual plans for our students to address those gaps and so forth. I hate to just repeat what Amy just said. It's essentially the same process.
No, but that's great information, and I'm glad to hear that. And I'm pleased that we're using the, DIBELS and assessment tools to be able to monitor this, because it's I think this is much more valuable data personally than MCAS, down the road. And, this really, you're doing it 3 times a year. This is wonderful. And thank you. I appreciate the information, Mr. Miller and Ms. Sullivan. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Reardon?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I just wanted to mention, I think it's just wonderful that we're going to be implementing foundations. I know this is probably a long time coming for some in the community. I know we've had a really vocal group who have been advocating for some explicit phonics instruction. So I think that's obviously an awesome step in the right direction. You talked a little bit about tier 2 interventions and mentioned programs. Have we identified programs that we're thinking about, or is this more, when we talk about tier 2 interventions, we're more talking about the interventionists and the staff that we want to add, and not specific programs that might address learning loss?
I think at this point, the biggest budget impact would certainly be the interventionists, along with some of the training that teachers will need on implementing tier 2 strategies. I don't have a specific program in mind at the moment, though. Emily researches a lot of that stuff. Emily Russin, she's outstanding, and brings us that information as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious. I saw programs and I just wanted to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Reardon, at the kindergarten level, what we're looking to do is sort of restructure our literacy block, and how could that look in terms of doing a lot more differentiation in small group learning. And in the past, we've really used the Lexia program. We're using that fairly heavily this year too. It's actually our kindergarten team goal for the year to increase the use of that program. But going forward, just having the opportunity to work with our Title I teachers, we have not had Title I at the kindergarten level this year, to support that and perhaps offer suggestions going forward. But the way that I look at it is more how much time is spent on each portion of the literacy program, and who are the students that are most at risk, that need sort of a double dip or a double exposure throughout the day for their intervention.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Hogghauser?
Yeah, a couple questions. Can you guys quickly explain the difference between a coach and an interventionist?
Sure.
Because I know that, I think that's going to come up in other schools' presentations too. So I'm assuming the terminology is same across the district, but if you guys could help with that.
I don't know if it's the same across the district to begin with, but the way I see that position is as an academic coach who works most of that individual's time would be working directly with the staff, with teachers individually and in small groups, again, to build their capacity in math instruction in the case of the position we're talking about, similar to what our literacy coach has done over the past year. To me, and again, this is Tim Miller's version, an interventionist is someone who works directly with students, usually with tier 2 interventions to address some of the learning gaps and needs. I see the position as a little bit of both. At the beginning, I think we need to enhance and build the capacity of the staff in their math instruction. And then as we do that, we'll be able to pull back a little bit and add some of the intervention strategies. Amy, I don't know if you see it differently for your kids or not.
No, I think that you did a really nice job explaining that. Thank you.
The 3rd grade position,
Yes.
you guys have a number of people right now listed as remote academy positions. Are those classroom teachers who are currently teaching? I know you mentioned the math interventionist is currently working with the remote academy. Are the other positions classroom teachers?
I believe, and Amy, you know them better than I do from the history of their position, but that those are mainly 1-year positions right now.
It's a little bit of both. Right now we have Marian Gasparo at grades 1 and 2. She had previously worked as an instructional assistant. She had also taken on some different leaves of absence last year. And we were able to build a 1-year position in for her. Actually, I think she's at grades 2 and 3. I'm sorry, Tim. Because of the students in remote academy. At the other levels, we had 17 students at the kindergarten level. So that was a whole class. And Robin O'Malley, who is one of our kindergarten teachers, volunteered to be as the remote academy teacher. So I fully expect that Mrs. O'Malley will be returning to us, hopefully in September. And then we had hired a new kindergarten teacher through the budget process last year. Her name is Chelsea Morrison. And as you can imagine, what happened in September and at the end of August is a lot of kindergarten, families of kindergarten students opted to perhaps go to another school, or you know, if they needed longer hours than a half-day program for childcare. So we did have just over 20 students withdraw. So again, a whole class. So we took that position and we asked Chelsea, who we had hired to teach kindergarten, to teach grades 1 and 2 remote because of the number of students who had gone remote at the beginning of the year. So there was a lot of shifting, and it was, you know, it was a lot in the beginning of the year, but I think that, you know, we sorted it out. And we also have a special education teacher, Becky Chapman, who ordinarily, you know, would be in person, and she has been the special education teacher for the remote academy too. So it's a bit of both.
And I'm assuming we're expecting the current, I think the kindergarten's like a little over 100. We're expecting like a jump to first grade if everything goes back to normal?
It's really hard to say. So right now we are at 100. You know, as I said, we have 17 known students in the remote academy, and we have 20 students or so that were going to begin their career at the Bresnahan, and it's uncertain at this point, you know, how many of those students will return. We're not doing like registration for first grade right now. We are doing registration for incoming kindergartners, and I think that this year that is more, for lack of a better word, more volatile than ever, because it's very hard to kind of find those families. We've done a lot of outreach, but some of these families aren't families that are in our system already, so therefore they don't get our emails. And then when we call around to local preschools and daycares every year to inquire about how many Newburyport residents do you have, how many are age eligible for kindergarten, a lot of them said to us, you know, A, we're not open, or B, we're open, but we're, you know, operating at a 50% capacity or 30% capacity.
Right.
So, you know, maybe people are tuning in tonight, and that would be great because we do try to encourage as many families as possible to register for kindergarten throughout the month of February. But we continue to get those enrollments obviously between now and the end of the year. I will say though, the incoming class already has 100 kids, and I'm projecting about 140.
So that would be a lot more kindergarten than we currently have.
Well, yes, currently for this year, but not so much, Mr. Hawkeiser, if you consider there are, again, 17 in remote academy and 20 that withdrew. We would have been at 140 this year. And that's about on average where we tend to trend anywhere from like 130 to 150. Sometimes you really kind of have to watch closely that difference to see if there's going to be another section.
Last question is about to double up on Holiday's question about the learning gains. Would you say, like, how would you compare? I wouldn't even want to compare because this year was so different, but at the end of last year, when there was obviously just a blip still of remote time, but we had a large chunk of the year, and even the year before, what percentage of our kids do you think trend on grade level? Like if we're looking to increase by 20%, would you say that starts, like, that seems like a large jump to expect, which means.
It depends on the grade level, to be honest, Mr. Hawkeiser. We tend to reach more by the end of grade 3 at grade level because children are developing their early foundation literacy skills throughout that time, and what we know about brain research and when children make those connections. So if you look at our data, and I'm sure we'll be providing at some point, you know, that data presentation towards the end of the year. But if you look at our data, you'll see that we slowly make gains every year. I can say right now about 65% of our kindergartners are at grade level as of mid-year. I think I spoke to that being about a 10% differential. So at this time last year, it was about 75%. And then we grow as we get to the end of the year. So really, we do need that end of the year information. And I think the best comparison would probably be to go back before even last spring, the last time we had a complete school year, to see how far off the mark we may or may not be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Ms. Rossi and Ms. Sokolowski, you guys ready for your presentation?
Yes, we are. Let me
We
share
are
the
ready
screen.
for you.
Okay. Okay, everybody can see it?
Yep.
Okay. So obviously we are discussing our school improvement plan and the budget connections. We're really going to focus on our connections to the budget for this next school year. A thank you to our school council. Alyssa Gallegos is our teacher rep. Kirsten Gurley and Danielle Baptiste are our parent representatives. And we do have a link on this page to our full 2020-2022 Mullen School Improvement Plan. So we looked at our academic goals from last year, and we carried the academic goal over and a social emotional goal over, basically because we were pretty much out in March moving on. But what we did was we updated the strategies and activities that we want to implement to get us to where we want to be. So our first one is regarding meeting regularly to review student data. That is ongoing, but we meet to look at academic data, and we also meet to look at our social emotional data. We have a system that assesses social emotional data, and we do that 3 times a year. So the immediate connection to the budget would be hiring a second interventionist. We've had one interventionist at 4th and 5th grade doing both math and literacy for the past couple years. We'd like to have some more PD on in-class tier 1 interventions so that the academic tier 1 interventions around reading and math are a little more consistent class to class. And we do use some software that's currently in the budget for assessments and a bunch of software for both math and literacy intervention. Amy.
Continuing on the goal that Tara just started with 100% of our students will demonstrate growth. We would like to continue to implement reciprocal teaching, keys to literacy, vocabulary and comprehension, and Bloom's taxonomy strategies into all curriculum areas, but specifically our literacy blocks. Our staff has continued to implement keys to literacy as they use MyView, the literacy program that we're using this year for our hybrid model. But we think it would be great to continue the keys to literacy professional development moving into future years because it's worked really well for our staff.
Another one of these strategies that we'd like to work with, and this is somewhat new, we have in the past done some work with Dr. Stephanie Gottwald, and we are at the Mullen, we really want to beef up or look at our language-based program and improve it. We already did some work on identifying different types of reading disabilities and the programs and strategies that work for the students with the different types of reading disabilities. But we want to improve our language-based program so that both our special ed and general ed teachers will get some additional PD and coaching in language-based strategies. So we would like to hire a language-based teacher. And again, the students that would be part of the language program will have a specific profile that we will work with Nancy Koch and Deb O'Connor and our special ed teachers to decide who would be part of the language-based program. The professional development, like I mentioned, on language-based teaching strategies, and we will be beginning professional development with a consultant from Landmark School.
Another goal is to increase the number of students receiving academic intervention in both math and literacy. To do this, tied to the budget, we would like to hire a second interventionist for tier 2 interventions. We would like to incorporate professional development for the in-class tier 1 interventions that classroom teachers provide. And that also requires the cost of the software for assessments in math and literacy intervention, which we do on a regular basis throughout the year.
So our social emotional goal is to continue to implement a safe and supportive environment. We've been working on PBIS for a number of years. We had just started to use the Swiss data system. It's a school-wide information system that collects data on the behaviors of our students. And we had begun using it on paper, and then we purchased the software program, which made it much easier to really look at the data and break out, is it certain classrooms, is it certain locations, are things happening more at lunch and recess? It's an excellent system. And then we'd want to, continue to move forward with our PBIS materials for staff and students. We, as a school, create PBIS passports for our students. And as we teach expectations at the beginning of every school year for each area of the building, the students get a stamp in their passport. And it's just something that, it's a positive approach, and the students love getting their stamps and their passports.
We would like to continue staff education on safe and supportive schools, trauma-sensitive schools, and studying the impact of trauma on learning and also mindfulness. Many of you know the Mullen is a trauma-sensitive school. We've been fortunate to have trauma PD for the past 5 or so years. And the majority of our staff voluntarily took 4 graduate level classes through Lesley University to become trauma certified. So that's something that's very important to our school, but we want to keep going, keep getting better, and keep introducing this to new staff members so that it just continues to be a very big part of our culture. So to do that, we would like to keep using the BIMAS, the Behavior Intervention Monitoring Assessment System, and continue PD on trauma and learning and mindfulness throughout the year with our staff.
So we've already begun the work slowly on working on the cultural competency work with our staff. We want to do this thoughtfully. So we've started this year. One of the steps that we've taken is having our staff look at literature in their classrooms. And we used the guide for selecting anti-bias children's books, which is on socialjusticebooks.org. It's a fantastic website to go to really take a deep dive into literature. So we did that at one of our professional development days. We also have professional development this Wednesday with Michael Eatman. And the district will obviously continue to be working with Michael Eatman throughout this year and really hopefully next year. And we would like to offer a book group for our staff that are interested in kind of delving deeper and how to have conversations with students at the elementary level that may feel difficult or uncomfortable at times. That's it.
Great,
We're
thank
fast.
you. I think Sean Reardon has his hand up for a question there.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. Yeah, I just have a couple questions. The first one, it said on the other page that you wanted to continue using a math reading intervention software. Is that just a screener you're using to place kids in intervention, or is that actually an intervention program you're using with the kids?
Yeah, those are intervention programs, Sean. So we use, well, there are a number of in-class assessments that staff do consistently. But an overall assessment system that we use is STAR 360.
Yep.
And we do that, normally we do that 3 times a year. This year, we've been doing it about every 8 weeks, so we can kind of look at the improvement of students, since we're so concerned about the time that they were just online and not in the building. So we're doing it a little bit more. So yeah, those are some intervention programs that we've had. We just want to continue to keep in our budget. Read Naturally is a fluency one. IXL is like a practice one for math. Lexia is for reading. So there are a number of them that, not just the in-class interventions with teachers or our tier 2 interventions, which is time with an interventionist, but kind of double up and get some work online. And you can, though, see where students are at when they are on those programs and how they're progressing. So it does also give feedback.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. The other one I had was that Swiss software that you're using is that just being used at the Mullen, or is that district wide?
That is at the Bresnahan, the Mullen, and the Knock.
Okay.
High school as well.
It is high school. Sorry, you guys.
Yeah,
That's what I figured.
2 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I just never heard of that, and I just assumed, I assumed it was
Actually,
district wide.
they started it before us.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And the last one, just the fact that we are a trauma level school. Are there grants out there? Are we finding that there's grants out there that kind of cater to schools that have taken the time to get that certification?
I don't know about. I'm sure there are. So I'm sure there are, Sean. The program at Lesley University, teachers can sign up for the program. It's $500 per course for courses, and they can sign up for that. And I believe there's a percentage in their contract that they get back for taking the course. And then there's also the Swayze grant, which a number of our teachers use to attend social emotional trainings and trauma sensitive trainings. We've incorporated it naturally at the Mullen, like Jamie said, from the summer of 2016, and we've just continued with it.
Okay, no, that's great. I just thought that's a really cool thing, and it's unique. So I would imagine they are. I mean, I wasn't expecting you to know if there were grants out there, but it would be cool to look into that maybe a little bit more and see what else, what other funding we might have available for that.
Yeah, truly the course, the first course, Trauma and Learning, really focuses on the impacts on the brain in students. And it really, when I've had a number of teachers say when they've taken that course, they really have a mind shift in looking at different behaviors that students may be exhibiting. So it's an excellent program at Lesley.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Spalding has a question for you.
Yes, this Swiss program sounds incredible. Does that information transition with the students throughout their tenure in the school system from each school?
I'm not sure. That's a good question, Sheila. Lisa, do you know? I'm not.
I think so, yes, but I'm going to let Mr. Marcos answer that because he's actually the expert in our school for the Swiss.
Expert is an overstatement. Thank you. It actually can. We just have to work with the representatives. So they actually had a switch of representatives at the end of last year, so they can actually carry over. It's not necessarily carryovers from year to year, but we would be able to have access to the Mullen data, and then they would be able to have access from the president. It doesn't just upload like Aspen, say, go back from 2001 to 2000, say, for a discipline referral, but we would be able to get access and see some of those referrals that the Mullen may have had on a particular student or groups of students.
That's great. I really like that.
Thanks, Nick.
You would have a bigger picture of incoming students. And the other question I had was, is it called BIMAS, B-I-M-A-S?
Yes.
How does that differ for the information that you're collecting from the Swiss?
So this was brought to us by our school counselors. Maggie Flaherty in particular brought this to our school. It's truly, Sheila, it's amazing data. We love using this. But it asks the teachers to look at, to reflect on a week, and it has to be the same week, and you're just looking at that 1 week. And there are a number of questions that teachers have to answer just thinking about each student. And then it will like categorize it, some of like there's an academic category, but it's not like how are they doing academically. It's more what is their approach academically? How are they feeling academically? It looks at affect, student affect. So is there a negative affect? It looks at the social. I want to say there are 5 categories and I can't remember them all off the top of my head. But what we do is we'll look at the fall, we look at the winter, and we look at the spring. In the fall, we sit down with our counselors and our RTI team, Jamie, our school psychologists, and we look at students that are red flagging in any one of those categories. And then any students that are red flagging, our counselors connect with the classroom teacher to talk about the student and then try and put in some social emotional interventions for the student.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions for the team there? No? All right, moving on. We've got Mrs. Furlong and Mr. Marcos with the NOC presentation.
Awesome. Okay, give me a second. Okay, awesome. So Nick and I will just start by thanking also our school council. We have 3 parents, Rachel Forrest-Hay, Deb Casson, and Amy Brown, who is also a parent / our new wonderful office administrator. And then we have Lee Gordon from Youth Services, Jackie Russo and Boyd Hancock as our teaching staff, and Mr. Marcos and I, Nick and I. And then, of course, I love this picture of someday next year, we'll be back in the field in the beautiful Merrimack River, looking at the invasive species, unfortunately. So we're looking at our school improvement plan kind of at a glance. So you can see just in a 1 page how it looks like. I think it's the same setup as all of the schools in that we all have 5 goals that are aligning to the school district goals that the school committee sets in collaboration with Sean. And then what we do is look at in each building what can our school do to contribute or improve upon under that major area. So goal 1 is in regards to instructional leadership. That's been a big goal of both Nick and I and Tim Mahan and I earlier, is really just encouraging our teachers to look at student concerns from an instructional perspective. What moves can I make as a teacher? How can I change what's happening in my classroom so the student can be more successful, as opposed to a student focused? And of course we do that as well, but sometimes it's an instructional shift that can be made that will benefit all students, that one student's going to kind of push you towards. So how we got at that is some work that we've been doing for a number of years with Kevin Hutchinson, who is the retired superintendent from North Andover and a consultant to us to really look at what the other schools are calling their RTI model. We started calling our child study model. So took advantage of the fact that we are a middle school model. We have team-based meetings, cross-disciplinary teams of teachers with special educators who would meet weekly and talk about what was going on in their teams. And so Nick and our interventionist worked really closely with Kevin Hutchinson to develop a protocol where they would look at one student at a time and just taking the story of one student with the idea of what the teacher could do differently, not what the student could do differently. So that's been an important piece of our whole instructional leadership model. And that's been guided very much by Assistant Principal Marcos and Brenda Palmisano, our interventionist, along with all of our team leaders. And then in addition to that, the district was able to renegotiate the contract and put in the contract our instructional leadership team. And so I keep using that acronym and I apologize, people keep asking me, CEL, Curriculum, Educational Leadership. And you'll see that that group of people falls probably in every goal in this school, but shows up here under that established curriculum leadership model. So we do have a team of disciplinary-based leaders who can guide their vertical team of English, math, science, social studies, world language, and special education during our professional development times, to work closely with me and Nick in terms of deciding how we're going to use that time and then move our curriculum along. So that's been important to us under instructional leadership. The second goal of measuring academic improvement, of course, it's important to us to see that our young people are growing and to measure their growth in a variety of different ways. Important are the norm reference tests like the MCAS. We also use, like the other schools, the STAR 360, which gives us a norm referencing. It's something that we can use more often. I think this year we've used it more than ever because it is sort of a way for us to get a handle on where are our kids based on where we'd expect them to normally be. We've given that twice this year, but we were able to, for most of our students, compare back 3 years of growth. The good news is, I think, similar to what the Bresnahan shared, our students are growing, but we are spending some time really looking, especially in this round right now, in this trimester, at like, where would we have expected them to have been at this time in whatever grade they're in previous years, and what's our kind of gap. So also along that lines of measurable academic support is the expanding the world language and continuing to develop our programs. Mr. Marcos, do you want to take on goal 3 and 4? Do you have
So I think one of the things that's been really exciting about us at the NOC is just really the ability to be able to move our building during the pandemic. I think, along with, the work that the Bres, the Mullen, and the high school as well, as we haven't stayed status quo. We've been able to implement our curriculum, we've been able to move our students. I think a lot of it is also has to do with just the transparency of our staff and the work that they're doing, especially with around the Student Voice Initiative. So you guys know a couple of years ago that we shadowed our students, our entire staff shadowed our students for an entire day. And we really began to just realize some of the things that our students were going through. As staff members, as an assistant principal, I can, kind of sneak into my office for 5 minutes before, a meeting and maybe catch my breath. Obviously, teacher has a prep time. And we started to notice that some students didn't have a break in their day until Thursday afternoon or Friday afternoon because they were loaded with, say, band or chorus, multiple explores during their flex time, or some sort of pull-out services along with their, general education classes. So listening to that, we really wanted to get a hold of that. And really, Lisa and I have been meeting with students over the past, 2.5 years, and just kind of listening, like, what are some changes that we can make to the day? What are some things we can do? And we have continued that this year. Just recently, we had a group of 8th grade ambassadors meet with myself and a couple of 8th grade teachers, just to get a better sense of what can we do around 3 areas: flex, lunch, and recess, to make your day a lot better. If you came into our building, that kind of during the first 2 weeks of cafeteria, in the cafeteria, it was like a morgue, unfortunately. It was like kids were not talking to each other. It was like, this is not middle school. We've got to change this. We tried to do movies. We tried to do music. We tried to do an array of things. So eventually we just started to bring our students into the building, into the meetings, and they started to give us a better sense of like what they actually wanted. So some of those things will be implemented, obviously taking into the safety and health considerations. Those will be implemented pretty soon, especially as the weather gets nicer for us as well. Also around the student voice, it's really been a build upon around our PBIS model that we started, 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. Obviously, when Tim was the assistant principal, working with our BLT, and obviously they played a big role in the advancement. So also, I think the transparency of our curriculum ties right into the data portfolios that we're doing. So a big piece of our social emotional piece has been our advisory. Lisa and I really wanted to start the year this way with just a very intentional way that we're going to build relationships. That's not anyone crying besides my 9-month-old in the background, so I apologize. It's past his bedtime. But really just, we wanted to implement advisory, not just to build trusted relationships with our students, but really have a very intentful start to our day. So every day for 25 minutes, we start an advisory. It started around an intensive unit where students were focused on identity, around community reads, around school-based reads and articles. And it's really just evolved into just a slowed down pace for our students to get into the building safely and start the day off the right way. How it's evolved now getting into the second trimester and the third trimester is our advisors have become academic coaches. So now in a macro sense, they're able to talk about the STAR 360 data with their students, have like a mid-trimester check-in and say, hey, Nick, how are you doing in your classes? Like, let's pull up your Aspen. And a student will, write down their grades of where they're at, and then they'll work with their advisor to come up with a goal. So let's just say Nick's got, 3 Bs and 2 C minuses. We're going to dig a little bit deeper. What's going on in those 2 C minuses? Oh, well, you missed a quiz in science class. What's your plan to make that up? What's your plan to make up the 2 assignments in social studies? So that trusted relationship with that adult that started off around, intent, around identity, getting to know you. Now it's essentially an academic counselor that you see every single day. The final piece of that will also be to tie in the parents. So hopefully by trimester 3, our parents will be able to have a conversation with their children to say, okay, now I understand. Here's your STAR data. Well, what's that STAR data mean? We'll build the capacity of our students to be able to kind of coach them up to have these conversations with their parents along also with their grades. And then from a micro sense, it's really going to tie into our common assessment. So teachers will then be able to talk about STAR, talk about their specific data in their classroom to really be able to measure their growth over the course of the year. So that kind of ties in goals 3 and 4 for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice. And I think, at 5 as well. So the reason that I like to put this out as just one slide with like all of the goals together is you can see that as one school, we're working on all these discrete areas as goals, but really it's holistic. It all fits together. So the work that Nick is doing with the child study program fits together with the work that our advisory leaders are doing with the data coaching with the students. And then that fits together with our intentional and transparent curriculum. So we've worked really hard over the past 3 or 4 years to begin to really publish our curriculum, to really, as we were working with Billy Dunnigan and as we're developing skills-based units, to put those up so that our students can see them and so that they're written in a way that what Billy calls I can statements, and kids can see, hey, here's where we're trying to take you. Here's your data. Here's the standards we're trying to teach you. Here's the way that we all want to work together, our PBIS kind of stuff. And really hope that all these bits and pieces are starting to come together. And I think even in this COVID year, I can see these bits and pieces coming together. And in fact, I think that some of the work that we did in previous years has really helped us to be more together and more focused as a team through this COVID year. So that's kind of an overview. Then, so how does this school improvement plan kind of impact our budget, or what are we thinking about when we're building our budget because of the school improvement plan? And these are sort of the top 4 areas where there's a financial investment in the school improvement. The first is to continue to grow the, Newburyport many years ago, Mayor Holliday, others who have been here for a long time, remember that, I know that my oldest son, when he graduated from Newburyport High School, he had world language starting in kindergarten all the way through high school. He took Spanish. And then when he got to the middle school, there was multiple choices of languages you could take and really a very robust world language program in the community. And when that program was cut because of budget difficulties, there was always a commitment on the part of the school committee and the district to rebuild this program. So, and it's also as a part of our strategic plan, we worked closely, as you guys all know, 3 years ago with Nicole Scherf for a couple of years in sort of constructing, well, what's this plan going to look like? And how are we going to do it? And I think we really intentionally decided that we were going to do it with just one world language for now, with just Spanish, that we would start by really expanding 7th and 8th grade so that students got a daily opportunity to speak Spanish with a teaching strategy that was much more focused on young people learning to speak and becoming literate, with the long-term goal of creating a robust system where our students, the students of Newburyport, can be moving towards biliteracy. And that at the end of high school, we will have more and more students who will be able to say, I am a biliterate person, I can pass the tests and have a seal of biliteracy on my diploma. So in order to get there, I think that what we had planned a few years back was this gradual rollout that first we get 7th and 8th grade into a daily, and then we'll add 6th grade into a daily. And so that's what these 2 positions are. We anticipated putting them in this year's budget for the past 2 years. So here they are, they're hitting here. That's what that is. The second piece is really working closely with Nancy Koch, and similar to what Tara was talking about, I think across the district, we're really looking at our language-based programs. We continue also to work closely with Stephanie Gottwald and increase our ability to provide stronger and stronger language-based programming. And so these are kind of tweaks to our budgets. Slight increases in places that we're really got students coming forward and we're looking at their grids and we're looking at what's going to be needed in front of us. And that's the increase in our SLP speech language provider and a 0.6 reading teacher. Student voice continues to be super important. So together with the high school, we have in our budget more work with Essential Partners, and Essential Partners is the organization that has been working with both the middle and high school in teaching our teachers to create a dialogic classroom. So establish teaching strategies, which I think comes back to our instructional leadership goal, where teachers are drawing out student voice within the classroom. Young people are not just like sitting passively learning, but are participants in the conversation about the area or the content that they're learning. And so we're hoping to have a Essential Partners coach. It's a pretty extensive program that Lynn Cody went through last summer. It's pretty much all summer long. And our teacher then would be able to continue to move that work along with us in collaboration with the high school. It's another, I think, really nice way of a benefit that Andy and I have been trying to build that team of 6 through 12. So we get an opportunity to often look down to our friends 4 through 8, and then we also want to keep looking up to our colleagues 6 through 12. B, our 6th grade has for like 25 years gone to Camp Kiev for a leadership program. And so we're in a position now where we're working closely with our 6th grade team. We've been working closely with Project Adventure in Beverly to develop what will be the future of that program. And so we kind of have bits and pieces of that in our budget. It's really very much a work in progress right now. We really just started these meetings, but we do want to keep our eye on the idea of our 6th grade leadership program and see where we're going to bring that and what that will be next. And then of course, ongoing use, you will see in our budget of just like sort of gradually growing spending on software licensing. And to me, this is about a variety of different things. We have some software that everyone's using. We have, for example, Swiss is a great example of that. And we have other software that just some teachers are using. And we have some software that some departments are using. So we're trying to be very intentional, along with Jackie Russo, to give our teachers, the most exciting part about teaching is creating curriculum and being able to come into your classroom and have the freedom to say, like, I really want to try this. And so for us, if whatever this is aligns to your standards, and whatever this is can have some measurable outcome that you can use to show that students are growing along the standards, then I say, that's awesome. Let's allow teachers to be innovative, to try new things, and to get things moving along. So Jackie, Nick, and I have worked pretty close about like, here's what we're going to keep, here's what we're not going to keep, here's what's working, here's what's not working. And that's where you see that line kind of growing. And then lastly, I'm going to let Nick speak to this page, but we do have some of our school improvement priorities that they're not hitting our budget this year, but of course, they're still very much in our mind, and they're work that we're going to continue to do within the budget that is put forth, but it's nothing new. There's no new ask here.
Yeah, I think this just really just summarizes everything that Lisa had said and myself along our goals. When you look at music and performing arts program, obviously that's really been probably the biggest hit that we've seen at the NOC this year, obviously with the circumstance of the safety guidelines of not being able to sing, and obviously, the idea of, playing instruments in school. I will say that they have done a remarkable job, both Brian Nickerson and Kathy Shepard, in keeping kids engaged throughout this year around chorus and around playing their instruments through our flex block. So we have reached out to some model middle schools throughout the North Shore. Ipswich tends to be really a model around middle school and high school band and chorus. So we have set up some time for Brian and Kathy and myself and Lisa to work with them to really try to expand some learning opportunities. Kind of looking at, depending on where we're at with that, with the expansion of world language, will also impact the growth of our music and arts as well during our flex block. So once we're able to solidify those positions, we'll be able to get a little bit more creative with our flex blocks to be able to create that time for our students to have a more targeted approach with band and obviously chorus. Like we said before, our skills-based units, it's very transparent. Our teachers have been working their tails off throughout the year to get those online for parents, and also just, revamping them. I mean, just because we went to skills-based, it doesn't mean that curriculum stops. It will continue to enhance as our staff continues to, work through certain units. They'll make tweaks, year to year on those units. And then, like we said, with our advisor and our social emotion piece, obviously we're going to be super excited next year to be able to, hopefully use Jacqueline Bennett's space with our wellness program, and also just be able to use the weight room a little bit more as that, as it's obviously been kind of a closed place this year for our students to be able to, get some energy out and just be able to have some mindfulness time. And really the last piece here, is a restorative justice. It really goes along with our PBIS model. It's really the reason why, technology like Swiss is around. So as you guys know, restorative justice is really the fundamental change in how we respond to kind of rule violations and misbehavior. Obviously, the typical response to behavior is, punitive. It's punishment. But restorative justice really resolves disciplinary problems in a more cooperative and a more constructive way. So it's the opportunity for our teachers and our administrators and our students and our families to really build relationships, and really just strives, in my opinion, for just respect for everybody. It really provides an opportunity for an equal partnership, an equal dialogue for all those that want to participate. So oftentimes, middle school can be, tough on children, especially around peer relationships. So oftentimes when we're kind of handling disciplinary issues, we'll reach out to families and say, one way to work this out is to bring the students together in a very, very safe environment where, we have some people that are trained in this restorative practice justice, where we'll bring two people together. And it's really, it becomes it's a tough conversation to have, because that student's going to tell you how they feel and the other student's going to tell you how you made them feel, and vice versa. But really what happens, you both leave there, whether it's one session or two sessions or sometimes 3 or 4, you really leave there with the understanding that regardless of whether we're friends or not, we're going to be able to kind of live and coexist in the same place, and we're going to respect each other. And if we hit a bump in the road, we know that we have a trusted adult that we can go and have a conversation around how that person had made me feel in that situation, whether it comes up again. So those are some of the things, we're really excited about to continue our work and hopefully have some more access to, as we get back to normal.
Great, thank you. Looks like Mr. Reardon is first again.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you for that presentation. That was great. I just had a couple questions. First, I think the restorative justice work that you're doing is awesome. I think that's happening in a lot of districts across the country. So I'm glad Newburyport is continuing to work towards that. I think that's absolutely vital. The question I had was more around world languages. So I love that we're hoping to add grade 6, and that's going to be a core class like it is in 7th and 8th. So does that change? I know right now, we're starting from scratch in 7th grade. So does that change how we teach in 7th grade if we're starting in 6th grade?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure the goal is still to be hopefully to test into Spanish 2 going into high school. I know that's the ultimate goal. I know that doesn't always happen, but I know that's the goal. And I guess if that's the goal and that's the model we're using, and I think you mentioned really quick, Principal Furlong, about possibly adding languages down the road. So if that happens, is that changing the model, and now we'll be kind of back to an elective model opposed to a core model? I don't know. I was just curious what the plan was, I guess.
Well, I think our goal at the middle school right now is just to establish it as a strong part of our core, so that students, what's one of the nice things that we're really seeing as a benefit of our 7th and 8th grade program is that because it's a part of the core, because students are speaking and the language is all about them. And because of the middle school, the way we work as an interdisciplinary team, you're seeing the Spanish words showing up in math. You're seeing them showing up like kind of across the different interdisciplinary projects that students are doing. And then, sort of a unexpected or unintended side benefit has just been the cultural side of it. So the 4 teachers that we have who are our world language team right now are just unbelievable in terms of bringing together the cultural side of the Spanish language and looking at it from a Mexican perspective, looking at it from a Peruvian perspective, thinking a little bit about, developing that cultural competency framework through the enhancement of language. So I'm really excited about it. I think that it fits beautifully in the way that we do business in the middle school. And then, in terms of like, how do we grow it down and how do we grow it up? So how do we grow it up? That's where Andy Wolf, Alden Metz, who is the instructional leader, I know that they use a different term at the high school, instructional leader at the high school, Nick and Nicole Scherf and Angela Bick and I have been meeting and sort of planning out, what does that mean to a student who then wants to take German in 9th grade, and how is that going to work, and planning intentionally for that, and what's the impact going to be on what Spanish courses will students need to take or be ready for this year, next year, and the following year as we get moving forward to building up. In 3 years from now, Andy's going to have students entering 9th grade who will have had 3 years of hopefully daily Spanish versus the students he has this year who have had, kind of 1 full year of all in. We're using the Avant placement test as a way this year of figuring out, actually students just took it last week, to see like, where are we at right now in this point in time so that the high school can begin to plan. So I think that we all know that like, we're going to have to be flexible as we grow the program. There's going to be an impact above. And if it's possible to grow below, we're going to have to think about how do we want to do that.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for the NOC team? Dave, you raising your hand?
Sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
I guess I want to say to all 3 of the past presentations, I love that everyone's really focused on literacy and literacy in the content areas and tier 1 instruction. I think that's going to be a huge benefit for kids throughout K-8. So I love to see that. With regards to the world language that you guys were just talking about, I do just want to say, like, as much as I support that program, I also really want us to think about things like the performing arts, because I think they're getting a side glance, comparatively speaking. And I think the numbers of kids that are involved in the program, we've been talking about that for years, like how to build a stronger performing arts program. I think the numbers, the kids that as the years grow up, just shrink on us, and the opportunities shrink on us. I was talking to some people in the performing arts at the high school, and the band there is still attached to the marching band, which is something we were hoping to be able to pull apart if there was enough programming for it. So it's just something to think about as soon as possible to try to grow that, because ultimately Spanish is another academic class, right? And if anything got a short shrift this year with COVID, it was performing arts, where the kids really just couldn't do much of anything with it. I know the teachers tried their best, but we all know that just wasn't even allowed to go anywhere. So I just want to think about that, maybe, I guess in as soon as possible. Jamie, I know you're shaking your head because that's your wheelhouse. I don't have to convince you. So thank you.
That's why we also pulled that out on our school improvement plan, just to say, like, we agree with you. Nick and I have been meeting with our strings and band staff, and really just thinking about it's one of the reasons that we're going to visit Ipswich. They do really have a stellar program, and they've had some cool strategies of getting it going and keeping it in place, and how they work with outside musicians. And so we agree with you on that. I think the one little glimmer of hope that we have had this year has been in our 8th grade, who have been able to, through a grant with the Newburyport Ed Foundation, bring in the Commonwealth Shakespeare program to try to weave in. Eric Shilga has an idea, a long-term vision of really trying to weave in drama as a part of how we teach English language arts. And it's fun to watch him do it. It's very interactive. It's really thinking about the scene and the setting and the voice of the people, the characters in the books. Right now they're reading A Raisin in the Sun, which is a new text for us, approaching it with Commonwealth Shakespeare players who will be in the classroom with students this week. And really, again, I think that's where also it ties together with our essential partners and student voice, and having the kids do some presentation of monologues as we go through. So I agree with you. I mean, I thought more.
I know we're all on the same page there, and I think that works great. It's still a core academic class ultimately, and there are a lot of kids who are gonna just do better all around with the music, and I think that's pretty well substantiated in any literature we find.
Awesome.
And now that we've reached the ability for kids to come into Spanish 1 into Spanish 2 from the high school for more than 1 year, it's just something to think about.
Yeah, Dave, I know this might just be a consolation, but one of the plans that we actually had originally before this all happened, and as we were planning to open up normal this past year, was that every student was actually going to get chorus, regardless of whether they wanted to or not. 6, 7, and 8. That's one thing we were actually working on as we work through, because we really felt that our chorus could really develop into, some obviously live performances, and really just changing our fall performances and our winter performances to give our students that skill and ability to be able to perform in a live sense. So we really felt that was a valuable point. This is the guy that's singing right now on camera. He wants to perform for everybody. But yeah, that's something that we are working on. Even looking at next year as how we do our explore blocks. Potentially having every student, have chorus throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're ready for the high school. Mr. Wolf?
Yes,
Mr.
we
Teffa?
are.
Yeah.
Share my screen.
My youngest is 11 years old, so if you hear crying, I'm going to fly out of the room and see what's happening.
Well, thank you everybody for having Mike and I here, just to kind of give you just like all the other principals, an overview of our school improvement plan, but really how it connects to what we've proposed in terms of budget considerations for next school year. And this has been our primary focus as we've engaged in the work with our school council. So about student readiness, and what we kind of refer to there is students feeling when they graduate from high school that they feel ready for the challenges that will become them, whether it's with career or heading off into college. Growth, which is about empowering students to kind of know where they're at and developing their own goals academically to continue to grow forward, but then also equipping teachers with the ability to progress monitor throughout units and during lessons. And then the last piece, which is really about activating student voice and making sure that we have the structures in place at the high school to promote that. So I do want to give a special thanks to our school council. I think I saw a couple of them in the attendee list. So first, we have our teacher representatives, Ashley Lieblin and Catherine Sullivan. Our parent representatives on the team, Jamie Grant and Sarah Hall. Student representatives, Sierra Leahy, Lucas Dano, Ria Cower. And then our community representative, Margot Harrington, who has recently taken a new position. So we're working with Andy Egmont to add a new person on through the Newburyport Youth Services as well. But they've been just such a fantastic team to work with as we really work to review our progress from our prior school improvement plan, the 2018 to 20, to develop our new school improvement plan, 2020 to 22. And so this just kind of emphasizes our process that we took on. So really collected data and looked at artifacts on our progress from the 2018-20 school improvement plan, and used that to really reflect on, all right, what were the areas that we still needed to have some growth, and what were some new areas that we could focus in on. And obviously with COVID kind of interrupting us last year. So there a lot of our goals kind of are enhancements from where we were at for the 2018 and 20 school improvement plan. And then ultimately we used this school improvement plan to really inform how we were thinking about our budget for next school year. And so these are our goals that we have for the 2020-22 school improvement plan. As you see here, just like the other principles, I've also provided the link to the school improvement plan. But really a huge emphasis on how do we work to lessen the gap that we have with our all needs population and our high needs population. And by high needs, I refer to students with disability, our English language learners, and students that are economically disadvantaged. And so that is a big focus of our school improvement plan to continue to improve growth performance there. But then also at the same time, we've done a lot of work over the past 2 years to really increase student access to advanced coursework studies at the high school, whether it's advanced placement work or courses that students can take for dual enrollment. And then when we were reviewing our progress with that, even though we've increased the opportunities available for students, the gap actually increased in terms of the number of high need students accessing those. And so we did have a pretty healthy conversation at the school council about what might be some areas that we could do to try to support greater access to our higher level classes for our students. And that is a new measure that the state now has in terms of high school report cards. The other piece is another big goal is all students demonstrating college and career readiness skills upon their graduation from Newburyport High School. That was one of the data points that we have been reviewing. The state has done a great job in terms of now progress monitoring students when they leave high schools. And so being able to give us an idea of how well our students sustain in college and when they enter college, being able to leave college within 6 years with some type of degree. And so we now have, I think it's now the 2011, 12, and 13, and how those classes have performed and are around 59% achieving a post-secondary degree when they graduate. But that's still kind of, it's a piece that's really informing some elements of our school improvement plan that we recently developed. Oops, sorry about that. And then the other part, which also we're hoping really supports that as well, is that all students leave high school with a personalized and flexible post-secondary plan. And our final goal is to really continue to improve upon school climate across the board at the high school. And that's using the vocal measure that the state has, which is views of climate and learning. Although it's unclear if they're gonna have the students take that after this year's MCAS or not. And so these slides here now just try to take our goals and the intended outcomes that we have for them, which I summarized, but then also trying to connect it to what we're proposing with our budget. And some of these things don't necessarily impact the budget financially, but as it's really more about how we're using teacher professional development time. And so differentiated instruction is really a big piece of this. And the work that Mike and I do with our instructional leaders in terms of equipping them so that they can really coach their teachers in terms of differentiating practice in the classroom and making use of during lesson data to make decisions on how to target instruction based off of whatever skill they are focusing on during the lesson. These items here with the 0.2 math and the 0.1 reading. So last year we were able to do work to build a sub-separate program for students that have social emotional disabilities, where we have had many students who have been out of district, and this was a way to bring them back and be with their peers that they had started their school years with here in Newburyport. And so as we continue to build these programs or build that program, the 0.2 math and the 0.1 reading really do help us out, because we did, in order to create the program, we did have to take away from our general ed classes to add sections for that program. And so this really, even though they are small ass, they really do help us overall in the building. And then the 0.5 out of district TFL, but then also partially with working with the grade 8. And so we've been working collaboratively with Nancy Koch. And this is also really helps us out at the high school in terms of our goals and in terms of focusing on the high needs population, where this person's emphasis is on students who are out of district and helping to monitor their progress and working on their individual educational plans. But then also with having an emphasis at grade 8, right now we share a special ed coordinator with the middle school for grade 8. So this allows us to have a special ed coordinator whose sole focus is at the high school, which really can make a big difference in our ability to collect data and really support students on IEPs as they move through the curriculum. So into the goal of increasing access to advanced coursework with particular attention for our high needs subgroup. So again, differentiated instruction is really a key in terms of equipping our teachers to be able to impact learning as it's happening during a lesson versus waiting for summative assessments that happen at the end of a unit. So that is the differentiated practice is a big focus for us at the high school, but then also at the same time is equipping our teachers to make use of their common planning and making our own common assessments. So that really grounds teachers and student learning data. The paying for the grade 10 PSATs. So there are some practices at other high schools is having all students typically in the sophomore year take the PSAT. And this just provides not just great data for each family to be able to look at how their student performs, but then it provides access to the school in terms of student readiness for upper level courses. And so by paying for all of our sophomores to take the grade 10 PSATs, it's really going to ground us in some great information so that we can see areas of our instructional practice or even curricula that we need to strengthen. But then also at the same time, as you find students who demonstrate through their performance on the test could be ready to take an advanced level course, it equips counselors and teachers to have those conversations with students. Okay. And so then with all students demonstrating college and career readiness skills upon graduating from high school, but then also leaving with a personalized and flexible post-secondary plan. And so really the big piece here, and this is our main ask this year from the high school in terms of the budget, is adding a college and career counselor. So even back from my entry plan coming in as principal, one area that I know that we've needed to really focus on is our college and career, our counseling office, and really better trying to situate it in, first of all, addressing social emotional needs of students, but then also at the same time supporting students with their kind of their guidance through high school in terms of course selections, but really trying to emphasize, what their passions and interests are. And the idea of the college and career counselor is someone who is really going to help us to better bridge connections with the outside community as we really work to build our internship program, provide more opportunities for work experiences and job shadowing, and to have a person that is a primary emphasis, but then at the same time working with the guidance counselors on helping students really make connections to what they're doing in the classroom, to their own personal interests and passions. And then a big piece of this position would also allow us to develop seminar classes that really give time for students to really just reflect on different career options that are out there, but then at the same time being able to explore in a deeper sense and with the guidance of the counselor, where their interests are, as I said already. And then again, which you also heard, and Lisa emphasized around our work to continue to improve school climate. So continuing our work that we had started last year with the Anti-Defamation League and training our student peer trainers, and then continuing our work with essential partners, especially in the area of dialogue. And just like the middle school, making sure that we have some funding that allows us to continue with having a dialogue coach at the high school to really model and support teachers in their planning of bringing dialogue into the classroom. And so that's really our overview in terms of how our school improvement goals led us to our thinking around this year's budget. I do think that's my last slide. Yes, it is. Am I still sharing?
Yep.
How do I stop that?
At the bottom, the green share screen thing. Shove a.
Oh, there it is.
Stop it.
Jumped up to the top of my screen. That's what
I was gonna say the other option is to just turn your computer off.
I think what Prince Philip does, it slams the lid shut. I guess I read in People magazine the other day. So anyway, thank you guys. Any questions for the high school team? None.
Can you just one thing real quick? Go ahead,
Oh,
Mayor.
I'm sorry. The mayor's got her hand up too. So
I just wanted to clarify one thing, if you would be so kind, Mr. Wolf, is that so if we don't pay for the PSATs, then we don't have access to the data?
You do have access to the data, but for the most part, just over 50, it's around 50 to 60% of our students take the PSATs.
Right.
And so this allows us to actually use the data for the purpose of reflecting on our instructional practice, our curriculum, but then at the same time, then we also have access to, they have these reports called advanced placement potential, which we currently do not have access to. All we get access to, because families are paying for it on their own,
Right.
so we get access to the actual individual student report. But then by jumping into their program, you have access to how different standards that are being assessed on the test are demonstrative of how our students are, what they're gaining through our curriculum.
Makes sense. Thank you. I appreciate the explanation because this was a change because parents have always paid for this. And I know this was a big change for us. So I was curious about that. Could you talk a little bit about the dual credit or the early college programs that are going on at the high school? And does that have budget implications for us going forward this year?
So right now, so we're working with Endicott College. So this year they've offered 2 courses for our students. And then working with the NEF, we're gonna be able to offer 3 courses next school year. And then we are also working with Northern Essex Community College. So where students are able to take classes at their campus, or this year virtually. And we are also working with Southern New Hampshire University, which is a different type of program where our teachers, we look at our own program of studies and identify courses that potentially could be in line with courses, with introductory courses at the university. Our teachers then have to go through a rigorous application process. And if they are accepted, then they become considered adjunct professors of the university. And then our students can actually earn credit for the courses they're taking here at the high school that are being taught by our teachers. So last year, Erin Hobbs, for her field studies class, so she was able to get that accepted by the university. And then Sarah Leadbeater for our introductory course to engineering. was also accepted. And so right now we've put in an application and then what's interesting is you can also do it with advanced placement classes as well. So our advanced placement chemistry teacher has put in an application for this year as well. So it's possible that if students maybe don't perform well on the AP exam, they could still have the option of earning credit through the university as well. So we're going to give that one a try.
That's wonderful. So is there a certain grade that a student has to achieve in order to, or is it just standard college protocol? That they have
Standard
to,
college protocol.
okay, pass the class. Thank you. I appreciate the update on that. What are the courses at Endicott College?
So we've had Sociology 101. We're offering, oh, why am I going to blank on this, Mike? Mike, you may need to.
The criminal justice course.
Thank you.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And then they're doing the athletic one right now. No, they just did a athletic train. But they've done 3 that have been pretty well received by the students.
But the other part of the question as well, Mayor Holliday, there's no impact, district-wide budget-wise, right, for students to have access to these courses because they.
I don't care. I think this is something that we should be absolutely supporting with our students. It's been on my list for many, many years, and I am just thrilled to see that we now have relationships with 3, higher ed, and are providing this opportunity for students. And I think this is wonderful. So I think it's great. So Mr. Wolf, sorry to put you on the spot, but if you could just list the classes that our students are able to matriculate into at a college level, I would appreciate that. I'm sure the rest of the school committee would too.
Yeah, definitely.
And I would appreciate that. So internships, it sounds like is a big push also, is in terms of where you're going next year.
Yes, it is. We're really doing a lot of work to afford students a lot more flexibility with their schedule come their junior and senior years, so that they really have the opportunity to explore a career area before they graduate.
And so would they in turn receive credit for if those internships and being able to explore, say they have an internship at Strum Chemical, for example, because they've been really supportive of our school district, and a student who's interested in chemistry, would they get credit for that internship?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah. So really a lot of it is centered on, because of that data that shows where 59% of the students in those 3 grades from 2010, 11, 12, had finished after 6 years and had a degree. So that's kind of pushed this work, is that part of the data out there is that if a student can take 1 college level class before they graduate from high school, it just increases their chances of persevering through college. But then the other part is if students have the opportunity to really explore their passions and interests before going to college, they just wind up going into college more with a plan. And even though, their plan may change, but they know that they're really driving towards, all right, I can adjust my plan, but continue to kind of work where my interests are.
Thank you. And just a couple more comments. So one further question. So when we look at the PSAT data, does that inform additional AP classes that could potentially be offered?
Yes.
Okay. How many AP classes do we have right now?
We have 13 total AP classes that we offer.
And you have a goal of increasing that?
I would like to, because we would actually like to be able to provide. So for the most part, it's really juniors and seniors that are taking advanced placement classes. And we would really start to, for students who are ready, to be able to offer more accessible advanced placement classes. So, I mean, that's really part of our goal.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Wolf. I just would like to say to all the principals and assistant principals here tonight, I can't thank you enough for this solid presentation from your school councils, your improvement plans, just really, really nice work. And it's been refreshing to hear this kind of dialogue, considering the challenges of this past year. So thank you very much. It was really, really well done. Thank you. Thank you.
Dave, did you have a question?
I did. Some of them are statements though. For example, we've been talking about supporting high needs population, especially economically disadvantaged kids in Newburyport for a long time. So I guess I'm just hoping you could keep us informed of how that work goes in the near future, especially trying to get them into the dual enrollment classes. Because that's, that could be a game changer for a lot of families.
I would agree.
Just to see themselves in that college position is tremendous. So I would love to hear in the future how that work pushes out. And I mean, to all kids, right? So, I could tell you that I think the guidance office is doing a great job supporting kids in the dual enrollment, because it's always a little tricky. But, helping all kids understand, I think, like the mayor was pointing out, the more people know about it, the more people know about the opportunities, the more people will jump on board, because it's too exciting to not get involved. I love the idea of offering the PSAT, because I think, like you said, a lot of students do take it. I do, though, worry about 10th grade as this testing hub of, it's almost like Pearson needs to invite us over for Thanksgiving dinner. We're going to spend so much time on their software between 3 MCAS exams and now the PSAT. It's a lot of time testing. Yep. And so I think, I don't know what to offset that. I'm just pointing that out. It's just something to think about. Then I think you and I have already spoken once, but as far as increasing access, it brings me back to the conversation about the language. Like, is it possible to get kids to AP language courses earlier, like as sophomores or juniors, so that they could then have time in their upper school for other APs that would traditionally take them that long to get to the AP language? Right? Is that, I'm assuming that's something that might be possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it comes down to student readiness. And I think that's the work that Alden Metz has been doing with Nicole, where our students now take the Avant Place assessment. So it gives a good gauge of their proficiency levels in the language. And so students are placed based off of how they perform on that assessment. So if you have a student coming in from 8th grade that's ready for a level 3, they can jump into a level 3 Spanish class.
And I just think that's something important, like as the years, like, again, back to the messaging, if students and families are aware of this earlier on, not that we need to increase the pressure, we don't need to start dialing in the screws, but to let people know, hey, listen, if you start taking your language seriously, you can be done with it and still achieve the high level courses early enough to free up space for things like internships and other course offerings as you get into junior and senior year. So I think that messaging, as we create the trajectory from 6 to 12, the messaging is really important.
I would agree.
And the only other doubling up, because that's the other place I see it, is like in the sciences, to stick there. And I know it's something we've been talking about for a while, but like, to see if we can get kids taking the AP science class without having to take it twice could also open up space for more kids to take a differentiated, level of types of classes and open up some more space in their calendar. So I really appreciate you guys looking into all of these things, because high school is about opportunities, right?
Yes, it is. And we can look into those.
Thank you.
Sean Reardon has his hand up.
Hi, Andy.
Hey, Sean.
The only question I had is, you mentioned a dialogue coach, I think, on like your last slide.
Yes.
Is that essentially is that 0.1 reading teacher that we have in our other packet from last week, or is that something that was added?
No, the dialogue, I think it was, Sean had it under the essential partners. So it's more of a stipend position where a teacher who gets trained by essential partners and then helps other teachers set up lessons focused around teaching students how to conduct dialogue.
Okay, no, that's great. I didn't see it on the list. I just wanted to check. Thank you.
Ms. Spalding, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Wolf, how are the dual enrollment course offerings selected? I was just curious.
So with Endicott, so with Southern New Hampshire University, it's really us really diving into our curriculum and seeing what might be potentially acceptable by the university. So there's that piece. With Northern Essex Community College, that's selected by the students. And then with Endicott College, Tricia Blackstock works with their advisor to really try to find what might be an engaging course that students would be willing to take on. And so right now, that's really been kind of the emphasis there for that class, for the Endicott College, that is.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks everyone. Sean, do you have anything you want to end this part of the meeting with?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think when we go back to the strategic plan, especially for the college and career readiness, I think our first phase was to really enhance our dual enrollment opportunities. So not only is it the Endicott College, and the NEF once again has been very supportive of enhancing everything, but this is one piece that was really helpful. So those are like night courses after school. The partnership with Southern New Hampshire is tied into the courses, and what we really loved about that, and Mr. Wolf talked about that, is getting our teachers duly certified, where they're teaching high school and college, and then the Middlesex or Northern Essex partnership there also. So I think right now we're putting the foundation in for an array of college dual enrollment courses. As Mr. Hawkeiser said, the more opportunities students have, the better. So this is I think a great start. The other piece that Mr. Wolf and his team is working on is the internship program. So that continues to evolve. We continue to plan that. But the ultimate goal for us, I think for students, is, by the time they graduate, they have college course accessibility and hopefully at least one college course under their belt, or an AP course under their belt. And then they actually get to experience a real world internship, that really, I think, gives the students a course of action. You have some students, from my experience with a comprehensive internship program, where they want to pre-med or they want to become doctors or lawyers, and they get in that field and it just really encourages them. Where other students, they're thinking about education and they have the opportunity for internships, it really encourages them. But on the flip side, we've had some students that really wanted education and did an internship at either an elementary school or a middle school, and they recognized that teaching was not for them. So it's also beneficial in that sense, because they get a little taste of what their interest is or what they think they want to major in, and they can also start making decisions around that too. But I can't thank Mr. Wolf and his team enough for heading that up. But when you look at our team and everyone who spoke today, I think for us, it's just, I think over 3 years, we really are bringing our team together. And I mean, all the administrators, our teachers, our associations, and I think we're all here for kids. So we're looking at it as from pre-K all the way up to grade 12. And really identifying what are the skills that our students are going to need from all of these levels. We build upon it each grade level, that when they leave Newburyport High School, we're confident that they're going to be successful no matter what they choose. So I'm just proud to be the superintendent here, and the work that I think our principals and our teachers and support staff, as we said, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have done a lot of great things in keeping our students and staff safe, but we've never lost. We're still moving our district forward. It has not been status quo for a year and a half. And I think that's reflective in our budget presentations. It's alive and well in the school improvement plans, and it's alive and well on the daily work we're doing. And it's recognized. The governor and commissioner just don't show up to districts, unless they know that there's positive things going on. And I just can't thank these people enough and our team enough for all of their hard work. So job well done.
Excellent. Next up is Ms. Spalding was going to present the CPAC mid-year report summary, but apparently she has a special guest. Would you like to introduce your guest, Sheila?
Yes, we have Lauren Hajar here, and she is the co-officer of CPAC, and she is going to present what they have been doing this year. And before she talks, I just wanted to let everyone know a couple of things. That CPAC stands for the Special Education Parents Advisory Council, and it's a state mandated organization, council. And it's different from the PTO or a PTA in that it represents all the students within the district and any families that receive special services. And I also wanted everybody to know that Lauren and Peter have gone above and beyond this year. In a typical year, they have 7 meetings the whole year, and we're halfway through the year and they've already met over 7 times. So I really wanted to thank them and acknowledge that.
Thank you so much, Sheila, and to the school committee for inviting us to present our mid-year progress report. So I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight, but I will first just, there's so many familiar faces. It's great to see you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lauren Hajar, and I am a parent of 3 elementary students. And I am also co-chair of CPAC, as Sheila mentioned. My colleague Peter sends his regards. He couldn't be here tonight. So I thought, I also want to mention, outside of CPAC, I'm a professor of public management, so I really enjoy public meetings, oddly, and really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you for all your hard work. This year especially has been somewhat challenging for many of us. So to date, yeah, as Sheila mentioned, we've had 7 meetings already, which is a little bit unusual. We would typically have about 7 total between September and May or June in a traditional academic year, but we have felt it was important, particularly at the beginning of the academic year, to have a couple of meetings to just kind of get a sense of where parents were at, what they were thinking, what they wanted for support in the upcoming year. Because as Sheila mentioned, CPAC is a state mandate. So we largely oversee a public process, but really we do a lot more than that, right? We provide resources for families, and we provide supports to the extent that we're able to do that. And we will also work pretty closely with Nancy Coach, and I believe Nancy's here tonight. I just want to publicly thank Nancy for all of her support and responsiveness to CPAC, but the parents in the school district. So I guess I'll just go through a couple of highlights from this year. In October and November, we hosted a couple of workshops. The first was a mental health panel, where we had the principals and the some of the other school leaders attend and talk about what they were doing to support student mental health in their schools. And many of you here tonight were represented on that panel, and that was received very, very well. Parents were really happy to just seeing the face of a leader, even on Zoom during this time, goes a long way. So that was received pretty well. And then we also Mike Nazaro facilitated a workshop on supporting children at home during the pandemic. And he did a nice job really engaging folks in their own individual scenarios. And it was also received well. We have also edited and accepted our updated bylaws this year. And we have developed a criteria for monthly, well, we're actually going to change it to be on the trimester, CPAC Teacher and Service Awards. So you'll be hearing more from us about that, but we really wanted to highlight the those staff and teachers that are going above and beyond the call of duty and servicing our kids with a wide range of learning needs and developmental disabilities. We also have, we're in the mid stage of developing a marketing plan to promote CPAC's mission to engage more families, particularly at the elementary levels, and that will include some outreach to principals. So you'll be hearing from us in the coming months, and we are working on some rebranded CPAC materials to be incorporated at all annual IEP meetings and 504 plan meetings. And then we have other things that we've done is maintain a social media page, and we have a regular channel of communication with Nancy. Nancy comes to all of our meetings, and I have to just say that matters so much to families because Nancy shows up, she gives an update on the state of the state, and she's so transparent, and it's a wide open Q&A, and people have really appreciated that. Some of our future goals include, having liaisons in each of the schools and creating a newsletter among a few other things. So I think that covers it. Nancy, Sheila, if you want to add anything, please feel free.
No, but I do want to thank you.
And thank you. Thanks for having me tonight.
And no, I don't have anything else to add. You and Peter have been fantastic, and you are just out there trying to get it all done. Good job.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. Numbers 8 and 9 are kind of kooky because they're essentially amendments to existing policies. And I know it says first reading and vote. Is everybody okay with doing a vote on the first reading since they're slight amendments to existing policies and not new policies, knowing that the policy subcommittee has already voted on them? Bruce?
Yeah, I just have a question about the wording in one of the items there, and I've spent a couple hours today trying to figure out what it says, and I can't figure it out.
Is that in the one for BCB?
BCB, yeah.
Okay.
So I just wanted to talk about that. I have no other concerns about these. I think they did a great job, policy, on this, but just need some clarification.
Sure. Does Sheila, do you want to address, talk to Bruce about that, since you are familiar with it?
Absolutely. What was the question?
3D, a school committee member in his or her relations to his or her fellow school committee members should not withhold pertinent information on school matters or personnel problems, either from members of his or her own committee or from members of other committees who may be seeking help and information on school problems. I'm trying to wade my way through that. We obviously would be holding any information that we had on personnel issues. It's not our domain. I'm thinking what other committees could be elected committees. Does that refer to the city council or just a committee of people who get together to improve schools? And I don't understand that. So whatever your thinking was on it, just help me.
Right. Well, was that already there? So when I added this to the packet, all of my edits were in red. I wanted everybody to see what we were proposing to change. Mm-hmm. So I believe that this already existed here. And if it did not exist, we actually cut and pasted that from the policy you had suggested. So this could very well be your writing.
Incomplete.
Right. It could be out of context.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we should consider this a first reading tonight and do the vote on our next meeting. What do you think? So we could all look at this over more closely.
And again, if you could tell me what you think it should say, I'm happy to take another crack at it. It does seem to me that, I think the thrust of it, if I have a vague recollection of it, was just that we need to share information among one another if it's going to be on the agenda of a school committee meeting. It was kind of the no surprises piece, but I don't know about the other.
Bruce, can you tell me which one you're referring to again? I'm just.
3D.
3B?
D.
D.
Oh,
is-
D.
Not withhold pertinent information. I'm willing to entertain all possible speculation about what that might mean.
Yeah, I've got the policy manual up. I think that's something that was already there. Not withhold pertinent information on school matters or personnel problems, either from members of his or her own committee or from members of other committees who may be seeking help or information on school problem. I mean, again, this is our members' ethics. I mean, just the way I'm reading it is, it's just asking us not to withhold information if other people are asking for it. I don't know. I mean,
I think we could cut that whole thing off after information, not withhold pertinent information.
yeah, you don't need all the other stuff. You shouldn't be withholding information from the group.
It reads to me seriously as if somebody at some point, something happened.
Yeah, they were addressing
and they were trying to address this through policy without actually saying what happened.
Yeah, and actually, as I think back on it, I think this happened. I suspect this happened 21 years ago.
So, right. So I think we could just end this. Sheila, I don't know if you have an editable version of this up, but if we could just stop that sentence after the word information, not withhold pertinent information.
Mhm.
I think that's fine.
Because I think that's the gist of that's the important piece, right?
Right.
Yes.
Well, I also think it's very important that we understand, the limitations of our committee in dealing with personnel issues. This is the purview of the superintendent. And if it's something that is relevant to information we need, then typically that happens in an executive session, right? In terms of personnel.
I think all the current members are pretty clear on that.
Right.
Right. So are we saying then that it's got the revised item G, which we all know about that's in here, and now with the edit to 3D, are we making a motion to approve the edits to this? Or Bruce, you have something else?
So moved. No, so moved.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Mrs. Kennedy, can we get a roll call vote, please? Mrs. Kennedy, you're muted there.
Okay, all righty. Where's my list? Okay, let's see. Mr. Menon,
Yes.
Mr. Reardon,
Yes.
Mayor Holliday,
Yes.
Mr. Hawkeizer,
Yes.
Mr. Cole. Is Mr. Cole there?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Spalding
Yes.
and Mr. Callahan.
Yes. All right, passes unanimously. Number 9, this same type of situation where it's just an amendment. We basically we removed one policy, BCC, and merged it into BCD. Is that accurate explanation, Sheila?
It is. We were looking at the former school committee's norms of interaction policy, and it was very repetitive. And we found that the statements didn't necessarily pertain to norms and we were looking at principles as well. And we just thought there was overlap and that this could be consolidated into one.
Again, the policy subcommittees voted on it. Does anybody have any questions or how it's written? Bruce?
Yeah, just will these be in the form of a document that we sign at our organizational meeting every year? Or we're just going to consider it policies and those were school committee members abide by them?
Right. That policy is still in the policy book that we will sign these. So that would just be amended to have them labeled as a singular document. But we would still, so now we'll sign 2 instead of 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's fine. I think that there's a lot of value symbolically and in a very real sense to us signing off on these on an annual basis. It's kind of like renewing our vows in some way.
And since we never actually signed it, right, because of all these discussions, so do you want to take that new version out for the next meeting, Sheila, and we'll sign that?
Sure.
Or can we just leave it at central office and we sign it, or does it, and then we talk about it on the agenda, however you want to do it?
Good work.
Okay.
I think before you go on though,
yep,
I think we should call the new policy BCC instead of BCD, so that 5 years from now, people don't sit around worrying or wondering what happened to BCC.
Okay, so rename the document.
Well, right now we're combining BCC and BCD and calling it BCD.
Right.
I'm just suggesting we go from BCB to BCC so that somebody doesn't think they're missing a page 5 years from now.
List them both on there. You could say BCC/BCD.
We could do that as well.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve this as amended, being the merging of BCC into BCD, being renamed BCC/BCD?
All right.
Who came up with this whole thing, the way this is written? It's crazy.
Make a motion that whatever Brian said.
Yeah, Brian, could you repeat that, Mr. Callahan?
Yeah, the motion is to amend BCC by merging it into BCD.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
It into BCB,
With a D like dog.
BCD, okay.
And then renaming the document, those two acronyms with a slash between them.
It's a Robin Williams joke from Good Morning Vietnam in there somewhere.
Then renaming the document BCC by,
/BCD.
okay,
I can email that to you too.
okay, all right.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Yeah.
All right. Can we get a roll call vote, please, Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes, who made the motion? Was it you?
Bruce did.
Bruce. Okay. All right, here we go. Mr. Reardon,
Yes.
Mr. Callahan,
Yes.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Miss Spalding,
Yes.
Mr. Hawkeizer,
Yes.
Mayor Holliday,
Yes.
and Mr. Menon.
Yes.
Okay.
Passes unanimously.
Does anybody know why all the policies are labeled like that instead of just numbered?
Nick tried to explain it when I first came on, and I still didn't understand it. We can ask Nick to come to a meeting and give a little presentation on the nomenclature on policies.
All right.
Superintendent's report. You still here, Sean?
I am.
All right.
Thanks for sticking around.
And I'm not on mute, so that's one for me. If there is crying in my office, it's me. We can shut down the. No. Poor Nick. I remember those days. 9-month-old babies. What I'd like to do is I'm going to just share just a COVID update, but also I think it's easier to kind of put our information, especially with the surveillance testing. So I'll share a screen and we'll do just a little presentation, and I can walk through kind of where we're at. Okay. Hopefully. Can you all see that?
No.
Awesome. I'll try this one. All right.
COVID.
How about this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect. Success. Well, first of all, I just want to thank, obviously, our whole nursing staff from day one have just been incredible. And then really highlight a lot of work over the weekend and really getting everything up and running. Kathy Riccio, Michelle Rubicki, Nelson Lane, Principal Furlong, Amy Brown, who's part of our administrative assistants that are helping setting up the surveillance testing in the sense of all the recording and organization. And then Catherine Page, who set up the website. A lot of that information has already gone out to parents, but for some of these slides, I'll just highlight and click on kind of what we created regarding the surveillance testing for everybody. So we're still going to continue. Obviously, the mitigation strategies have been essential, and that's why we credit our medical advisory team and our nursing staff from day one, along with Steve Burcombe and the custodial staff. So a lot of work has gone in on mitigation strategies, so we have not seen the spread of COVID within the school system. So part of our mitigation strategies right now, we have surveillance testing and pool testing that I'll get to in a few slides down the road. We have right now staff vaccinations scheduled, social distancing, mask and hand hygiene, contact tracing that's been ongoing, COVID metric monitoring, which I'll get to as part of the website, and then also continue to try to cohort grouping throughout. So our surveillance testing, so on this, we created, and I'll go to this website. There's a little link here, I hope. Yeah, I'll just go right now. So this is the website Catherine Page created, and in my messaging to parents today, it is in there. There's a link in the email that went out, and it just really walks everyone through what pool testing is, why pool testing, how is the test administered, and right here, this video from CIC Health, who we're partnering with, really walks parents through this. And this is just a great resource. Down the bottom of this, and along the principals are also sending out a message, another message tomorrow. But the student consent forms for families are here. And then also more resources for parents. So I think this is also going to be helpful, and we link this to our messaging today. So that's on our website. And once again, Catherine Page assisted, did a great job creating that resource for parents. So where we stand right now, as you all recall, January 13th, we had all staff, or as many staff, 319 staff participated in the initial PCR prevalence testing. So we got the baseline at that point where out of 319 faculty members and support staff, we had one positive, asymptomatic positive case, which really was, obviously, in the staff member that was asymptomatic is doing very well, and was glad to know of his case before it spread, throughout the family. So things worked out with that. In a partnership with Mayor Holliday, we also have been continuing working with the city and developing our surveillance and pool testing program. At the same time, after we did our initial PCR testing, the state DSE came out with the pool testing protocols and training, and then also with the Binex Now antigen test. So right now that's being funded through the state. They extended that pool testing up to April 18th. So it'll be free for charge for the district and the city. And then we'll look at our ESSER 2. There'll be COVID. We believe there'll be more COVID funding coming in from the stimulus package that we anticipate will be passed. And we really believe we'll be able to continue the pool testing throughout the school year to the end of the school year. So through DSE and CIC, we've begun the pool testing as we started to pilot the testing last week. We did two pools. On Tuesday, we did teacher pools, and then on Friday, we had teacher pools along with high school student pool testing. And we're having a slower rollout because we want to make sure that our systems are in place and our training is done. So we're going to be training the faculty, and along with our nurses are doing the training, and then the collection. So we're going to be working from March 1st to March 12th. As you know, the consent forms are out. We'll do the consent form collection. The website development is up and running, our teacher training, and then we're going to start to assign pool groups within the next few weeks. At the same time, we are still piloting and testing students. Our student athletes right now, and also teachers. But our comprehensive rollout and comprehensive testing will begin from March 15th. We'll be testing district-wide all the way to June 16th, weekly pool testing and district-wide. What this is going to provide us is accurate information on prevalence within the school system. So instead of us guessing, instead of us technically looking at spread within the city in the local area, we'll actually have some data points to make informed decisions regarding COVID prevalence within the school system. Our staff vaccination, and once again, Mayor Holliday and the city and working with Cataldo, as we all recall, we did have the original vaccination date penciled in for the end of February. But because I think of some of the delays, and as the governor mentioned on Friday, the lack of vaccination that have come to the states, which we think has been fixed by then, we had to postpone our first vaccination for faculty the week of March 15th through the 19th. So that's our anticipated round one vaccination shot. If all goes well, round two would be the week of April 12th to April 16th for our second shot. And then the second shot, we'd like to, and we'll talk probably about more of this if we do have a special meeting next week, April 16th, the Friday before vacation, we would have a professional development day. So we'd have in-house PD, the students would be off. Our faculty and support staff would receive their second shot. And as we know, if with the second shot, some people feel ill. So that would give us an opportunity to not only care for people that aren't feeling so well, but also give them the opportunity to go home if the second shot doesn't go as well. Some people don't feel well, while other people there's no effect. So we feel like this would be good planning. On top of the planning for the vaccinations, once again, have the comprehensive pool testing system up and running the week of March 16th throughout the year was also just another safety protocol that we have in place for faculty and staff and students. As we all know, the social distancing, so DESE has recommended schools use a minimum of 3 feet for masked activities and a minimum of 6 feet for unmasked activities. To meet these recommendations, each school, there's a lot of details that we're working out right now. We're looking at, once again, the classroom capacity, class sizes, lunch space and planning, and lunch monitoring for staffing. Although schools will use the outdoor space now as much as possible, we still have to have contingency plans and ensure a 6-foot space for lunch inside if it's too cold out, rainy, windy, or, the spring weather that we cannot utilize the outside spaces. So these are the details that we continue to work out at this time. So this was promising. This is right now, as of this morning, for the survey that we sent out to parents. We asked, just some very specific questions regarding the no less than 3 feet. And I like to say no less than 3 feet because as we're, looking at the spacing in classrooms, there are going to be some classes that would be at 4.5 to 5 feet, and some may be able to maintain a 6-foot distance because we have all different spaces and different classes and different programs going on throughout. So a no less than 3 feet in schools. As you can just see the chart here, 85% of families said my child is in the hybrid program and prepared to attend school for a no less than 3-foot distance. And that was 952 students. The next category was red at 2.7, 30 students. My child is in the hybrid program, but will switch to remote if NPS moves to a 3-foot distance. So we do have some families on the opposite side that will go remote that are already currently in the hybrid. My child is in remote learning and will continue with remote learning for the rest of the year. And that was 75 students that responded to that families. And the last one here, we have my child's in remote learning, but will switch to in-person if the distance is moved to 3 feet. So we do have some movement going on or some discussions. We're going to narrow this survey down and ask, especially for the remote academy students, to make sure we get the accurate numbers for that. We do have the enrollment, which is starting from March 1st to March 12th, which I believe is probably on the next slide. But we're reaching out to families in the remote academy. So as we continue to look at mask, hand hygiene, contact tracing, and monitoring, I think we all know, and all the research is showing, wearing masks on a regular basis, especially in school, will continue because it will be required for all students and staff to wear the school approved mask that we've been doing since we've been here in late September and early October. We will continue to hand sanitize throughout, they're available everywhere, but also having the same for the elementary schools, hand sanitizing breaks and making sure we're concentrating on that. Our contact tracing, school nurses will continue to work with the Board of Health and contact trace for school-related cases with COVID-19. And then COVID-19 monitoring. Our medical team will continue to meet weekly to monitor the state, local, and school metrics. And then this is another link for parents. This is our COVID dashboard that we also created. We created this a while back, but just to remind parents, this is information that gives you current data and you can go back for the parents. So that's helpful. And that was also part of our communication that went out multiple times, but just recently. So cohort grouping, we're gonna try to, as we know, cohort grouping, we minimize the possible spread and it allows for effective contact tracing. So we are gonna, as we do plan on bringing more and more students back, we're gonna do our best to our ability to continue to cohort grouping and minimize as much movement as we can. Each school will continue to keep students in set cohorts as much as possible. And then we'll increase, as I said, throughout as we increase students back in the buildings. So right now we have cohort A and cohort B. and Kathy Riccio, as we develop our cohorts, you're probably going to start seeing more classroom cohorts in bigger cohorts, but we'll still be able to contact trace as much as we can. The in-person recommendation, this is phase 1, and I think we're comfortable with this at this time. I mean, obviously we have a lot of details to work out for more in-person down the road, which we'll be presenting. I'm hoping we'll have a special meeting next week. But right now, I think we can commit to March 8th to March 19th over a 2-week period, a phased-in approach with struggling learners, students that are identified by teachers and administration. So as you heard all of the principals talk about a lot of the data analysis that we've been collecting and going on, they're developing lists of students that we want to bring in sooner than later. Right now, would phase in students in grades 1 to 5, grades 6 to 8, and 9 to 12 are already have begun that process of bringing students back. And it's not just necessarily academics, it could also be social, emotional, just our students and families that teachers and administration are concerned about, that we're going to be reaching out and bringing on board first. And then for March 9th, we plan to have a more comprehensive phased-in process that we feel would meet the guidance of the state and some of the initiatives that the state has in place. But for us right now, I think it's really continue the mitigation strategies. I'm really pleased with the surveillance testing and the work that our nursing staff has done to have that up and running in a robust way for faculty and students throughout the year. That will bring us all the way to June. And then Mayor Holliday has done, I just think, a great job in really working hard on getting the vaccinations. And hopefully, I know she mentioned this at the press conference that mid-March. So we do have it on tape with all the news stations that Newburyport will be getting our first shot mid-March, and that's the week of March 15th to that week of March 15th. So that's kind of our COVID update. A lot of the work, I think, what we've done for the past couple weeks is really to make sure that our surveillance testing and pool testing is up to date. And I think this is gonna, as I said, just gonna add another safety blanket for us. And instead of us guessing, we'll really have accurate idea of the prevalence in the schools, which will help us make informed decisions about in-person learning. The vaccination is also a key element for us, which would be wonderful if that date would stay, and all of the mitigation strategies that we've already had in place. So you know, we're going to continue to work on the details to bring more in person back. But as we reached out to our teacher association, who has been amazing in working with us, as we started to talk about in-person return, the teachers really wanted to bring back those students beginning March 8th, the ones that we could identify as struggling learners, get them in first for the 4 days, and then we'll continue to work with our teacher association regarding the next phase of in-person learning. So I think we're in a good place. And that's kind of my little COVID update for you. I wanted to share the website. I wanted to share the information that we've given to parents. We'll also, as I said, principals are going to be following up with their own personal letter to their families tomorrow with another video link on how the testing's going to occur.
Excellent. Thanks, Sean. Sean Reardon has his hand up.
Shocker. Superintendent Gallagher, thank you. That was wonderful. I know you mentioned about a possible extra meeting next week. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit and what that would be for,
Yeah.
I guess?
Yeah, my recommendation would be, because as we're working on the details of more in-person learning, we would like to have a special meeting scheduled for the phased-in plan that we can provide to the school committee and the community about more in-person learning, so people can start to begin to plan down the road, their families. So right now, we have a lot of details to work out. And as we were, I think, saying at the education committee meeting today, it's, so as you start planning this as a district, you know, we're responsible for the students when they're on the bus or they're on school property to when they leave at the end of the day. So when you look at one student and you say, well, this is easy to manage because we're going to be managing all of their movement and all of their breaks from, you know, the arrival to school, even within the classroom, how they're moving around and getting pencils or paper. So when you go for one, it's pretty easy. Then you look at 15 to 20 in a class and you got to monitor that movement, bathroom breaks, snacks, you know, moving. We try to restrict the movement as much as we can. But then you take the 21 class of 20 and then you expand it to a grade level of 150 students that you're monitoring all of those details from when they're here to when they go home. And then you look at an entire building or a school where now you're up to hundreds of students that you're monitoring all of their daily life within the school. And as you know, we have diverse learners, there's different programs, and then you add the other layer of faculty and support staff. So our, you know, I joked in my last message about no days off, or when I said that to the governor, and it's the truth. For us to be successful, for us to maintain our safety standards that we have had, it's a lot of planning, it's a lot of work, and the team, from the association to our to the administration, we're working on all of those details, following a student's daily life within the Newburyport Public Schools, just to make sure we're crossing our T's, dotting our I's. So we just need probably another week or so to provide that plan. We're also going to bring Mike Allard, who's been instrumental, and Dr. Sue on board to look at our plans, to look at the spaces. But we feel if we had a special meeting next week, we could just gear it to the in-person learning. That would be really the only agenda item. And then we should be pretty close for our plan and letting the community know where we stand.
Thank you. That's great. Great news.
Sheila?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Gallagher. I had a question about the high need students that will be phased in first. Will this be all students on IEPs?
No, I apologize for that, because as I read that, our high need students are already in for the 4 days. They're part of cohort C. This is just another layer. It's not just students on IEPs. It's really the classroom teachers working with the principals and identifying students that are struggling. So it could be students that are struggling with social emotional behavior that aren't on an IEP or that aren't in a subcategory. This is really from our teachers in working with the administration of looking at struggling learners right now that are in the hybrid that could benefit from a 4-day week. So it's going to be a mixture of a lot of different students.
So all students on IEPs are in right now? Because I think we've received letters from people who say,
No.
okay.
So when I said hi, I'm trying, maybe Nancy can help me out. So that the state identified our high needs or at risk high need students. They're the cohort C presently.
Right.
What we're doing is in the slideshow, I apologize. So in the slideshow, we're doing is we're adding to that cohort C. So it is going to be students that may be on IEPs.
Yes.
Maybe students, our Ls are already in, but it could be other students that are not on IEPs that are just struggling for various reasons. It's really the teachers within the classes have identified students that they feel would benefit of coming in immediately for the 4 days and let's phase them in first, and then we can work on the rest of the.
Okay, so we won't have all of our IEP students in then. Am I hearing that right?
Nancy, we are also going to have
We are going to have all of our IEPs.
Oh, good, good. I'm happy to hear that. And then I just wanted clarification, please, on Wednesdays. Will they be remote days or what will happen on Wednesdays?
Well, we're still working on that right now. I think for next week, we'll have a better understanding what Wednesdays will look like. But that's, as part of the phase 2, utilizing Wednesdays. But I think our plans will be a little bit different. So we'll have more information next week on the Wednesdays.
Great, thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Sean, anybody else have any questions for the superintendent? Great. Does anybody have any new business?
Bruce has his hand up.
Oh, Bruce, where are you? Sorry.
This has been a concern that I've raised a number of times before, but as we're moving towards more in person, I keep wanting to encourage us to meet in person. There's a kind of a disconnect between us meeting on Zoom and us, responding to parents who really want their kids in. So I feel like the time has come for us to really make a decision about getting back into face-to-face meetings.
I agree. The only thing I would question is is the limit still 25 capacity? Mayor, you know what the state limit is for inside? I don't even know though, because of activities, performances. I know there's some limit that the state put on.
Well, they said performance spaces that you could have, up to 50% of capacity. So I would think that, given the fact that we, in the interim phase before things exploded, that we had decided to meet in person, that I wouldn't say necessarily Tuesday because that's soon, but I would say going forward from our next meeting in March, that our meeting should be at the senior center, and that we will have to limit capacity of people who come in to watch the meeting. But we've also done very well, I think, and thank you, Brian, for that, for the combination of being able to Zoom people, have cable, and a few people in present at the meeting, socially distanced. So I would actually agree that we would start at our last meeting in March. We would start meeting again at the Senior Community Center.
Okay. And there's so there's no, if say 100 people show up, which would never happen, but we are able to say, sorry, a room is at capacity. You'll have to watch it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And we have the new technology stuff that superintendent bought, this OWL 360-degree rotating camera thing that sits on a table and follows your voice as people speak around the table. So that'll be fun.
No, I don't know if I like that.
Right now, that's why it's so high up. So,
okay.
Are we moving to a circular table for the meetings, or?
I guess we should.
Knights of the Round Table.
Yes. Dave.
I was just going to ask: is this something that's going on citywide? Like, are we?
No, because actually we had a meeting with tech people, IT people today, and we have major problems in the city council chambers because it's so tight, and you can't socially, you can't even put counselors in there socially distancing. So we're trying to figure out if we can install some type. We have an actual proposal from Ockers, who is really, the people in terms of IT work in schools and municipalities. And so there was an initial meeting today, And there's a follow-up meeting on Thursday to see if we could potentially get City Hall auditorium set up so that we could do city councils, planning board, and additional meetings. And I'm just not sure because of the difficulties of this old building. However, we definitely want to be sure that we have the appropriate IT that we need going forward, because the senior center might ultimately be the place for city council and additional board meetings that would be a combined hybrid model. Because it's, you know, we have to start moving in this direction. There's no question about it.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, it's not going to be a hill I die on, but I do not at all see, I've always thought since meeting one last year that our meeting remotely was the more responsible decision. In fact, I've heard from a lot of people that the remote meetings allow better access for people, better opportunity for them to use public comment, because they sometimes just can't get to the meetings.
Right. I agree. Oops, sorry.
That's okay. And I was just saying, I think it has nothing to do with the pace at which we're bringing students back to the classroom, because I think that's just a much different scenario. I don't think there's a comparison there. But I mean, if we want to go back live, that's fine. I was just being curious if that's something that that the city's going back to.
We're not quite as far because it's a bigger meeting than school committee. But I also, you know, as we look at technology for the senior center, I think that as we go forward, that we've learned a lot about remote meetings. And I think that we do have increased participation by doing a combination of cable, live, and Zoom. And, you know, we need to continue to work on continuing to present those options to the public, because we get much more participation, I think.
And the owl that Sean got us does, you will be able to do a Zoom. So we'll take the audio coming and then we'll broadcast it out better than what the infrastructure in the building is, or an easier way, I should say, that'll come through that thing in the center of the room. So the people commenting from their house, it'll be easier to interact with them.
Well, Brian, can I ask you a question then? Should I invite you to this meeting on Thursday? Do you have, you know, tech insight that you could help us?
I can bring the thing there. I can bring the thing that Sean got to that meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will make sure you're added to the invite on Thursday.
Do you know what time that is offhand?
I don't. I'll let you know. I think it's 10, but I could be wrong.
All right. I have to bring my mom to get her shot at CVS in Ipswich, so that will.
Okay. Well,
that will take priority, unfortunately.
Of course, that takes priority. Understood. But I will let you know the time of the meeting, and you also could just send me information about that, so that could be incorporated into the meeting.
Yep, I'll send it over.
Thank you.
All right. Sean Reardon, your hand's up. Is that just for fun?
Always for fun. No, I had one more question. You know, the work we've been doing with Michael Eatman's been brought up a few times tonight. Have we approached him at all about hosting a community forum around race and equity sometime?
Oh, it's funny you should say that, Sean. Michael Eatman has now done 2 sessions with the Alliance on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which our superintendent is part of. We have 24 people representing broad people across the community. For example, we have transgender students, we have gay students, we have people who are Afro-American, people who are Muslim. I can't tell you how pleased I was with the people who applied to be part of this DEI Alliance. And we're working on a SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. We spent 2 sessions with Michael working on dialogue and difficult conversations, a lot of what's happening in the schools. And he will continue doing work with us throughout the end of the year. And part of the goal of the DEI Alliance is that we will do something, hopefully with after we finish a couple more tasks. It takes a lot longer on Zoom, as you can imagine, in terms of getting through. But we meet twice a month. We've had consistent, really reliable turnout, great dialogue. We've participated in the Just Mercy community dialogue, and that's going to happen in April with our DEI Alliance. But I anticipate that we will be able to do another community something in the future. But Michael has agreed to help us with the community dialogue on the Rupert Knock situation. And he sent me an email today. I just didn't get a chance to get to it, but Sean and I will work with him on getting a time that we can set up a community forum to begin. That would be probably our first forum, would be to talk about, have a community dialogue about the incident involving graduation with the former principal, superintendent, I believe, of and then from there, we've talked about, there's been a request to do a conversation about the thin blue line flag. So we're starting to get more information. Some of the members will start doing more, have asked to start writing letters to the editor to talk about some of the DEI work we're doing. But it's a process and it takes time, as you heard from Sean in terms of the work that he's been doing and the principals with Michael Eatman, as well as, essential partners. So we're getting closer to that, but we will hopefully next month be able to schedule a time with Michael to help facilitate a community dialogue about what we want to do about the name of our middle school.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else got anything new? Hear none. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Kennedy, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, I can. Let's see. I have to keep switching these up. Let's see. Mayor Holliday,
Yes.
Mr. Hawkeiser,
Yes.
Mr. Menon,
Yes.
Mr. Reardon,
Yes.
Miss Spalding,
Yes.
Steve Gold,
Yes.
and Mr. Callahan.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later. Have a good night.
All right.
Right.
Night.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.